This afternoon we have a very interesting afternoon coming with Jack and Joan Donald. They've been here in Red Deer since 1955.
64.
And, 64. Correct. And we're being interviewed, having our interview just a block away from the Parkland headquarters. So we'll be talking a lot more about that later, but they've certainly been in Red Deer a long time and have become such a significant part of it, particularly over the years, particularly the latter years. So to introduce you to Jack and Joan, maybe we could start with either one of you about how you got together, and how you met each other, and how you, I guess in 1955 or thereabouts then. Yeah.
Well, we met in high school for the first time. Not met. He was in a class of mine, but we didn't really connect then. And
was that in Edmonton, no, Joan?
In Edmonton,
Yeah.
we're in Edmonton going to Golden Glow School. No, not Golden Glow.
Garno High School.
Garno High School. Sorry.
Oh, really?
And then he changed and went to a different school for the next 2 grades, so I didn't see him. So when I finished grade 12, I was going to take classes in the evening for business classes, and he would come into the bank. I was at the bank.
Royal Bank of
Royal
Canada.
Bank of Canada, at Royal Bank, and he would come in there to do work for his mother. And I'm trying to think, why are you doing work? It's not that kind of a guy that would do work for his mother. But anyway, he kept coming, and finally asked me out on a date, and we just got together, and we were married when we were 20.
Yeah.
That's it. We had to take our parents with us, my mother anyway, to sign for us, because in those days you couldn't get married at 20 without your parents' approval. So we did that.
Couldn't go and have a beer until you're 21. So
Well, unless you were at university and found another source.
yes.
Anyway, it was good, and we went from there. So you can figure out how we started out with our first company.
I grew up on the south side of Edmonton. Joan grew up on a farm at Millet. I went the first 9 years of school at Millet in a one-room schoolhouse with one teacher, and got moved into Queen Alex School in grade 9. And
In
I think
Edmonton.
had a little bit of a shock to be in a big school with a whole bunch of other kids in the same age. We met in grade 10 at Garno High School on 109th Street in Edmonton. As Joan mentioned, we started to date and ended up, of course, getting married at the age of 20 with both our parents' consent. We obviously fell in love and decided that the future looked pretty good for us. So we got together, and we've been together ever since as partners. So
That's 67 years ago?
yes, it is.
And then
Congratulations.
you were working for a company where I got a summer job 2 years in a row with, what was the company, doing parts.
Massey Harris Farm
Equipment. And
Oh, really?
so for summer job, I was sorting out parts and stuff that people had ordered and making up orders. And I walked right by him where he was working. And he'd always say, good morning or whatever. And that we stayed sort of in touch, but not greatly. And
She was a cute little girl walking down the sidewalk, and I said hi lots of times.
yes, you didn't use a hose on me or something. But anyway, we got together when he would come into the bank, and that's how we started out. So we decided, I don't know what year it was, Jack, when we had our first service station. We leased a service station and opened up a business.
This would be in Edmonton then?
Yes, on 118th Avenue, Parkdale Auto Service. That doggone park name has been hanging around for a long,
And
long
it
time.
was funny how many
That-
people.
is that how the name originated?
Well, it was the Parkdale district in Edmonton,
Right.
where this brand new Texaco station became available. And I was working at the Texaco refinery at the time as a lab technician
In Edmonton?
in Edmonton, yeah.
East
In the
Edmonton?
refinery in out Clover Bar Way. And so obviously left that job, and we had some money saved up. And we went to the Alberta Treasury branch down the street and borrowed some more, because you had to pay cash for your gas. So first load of gas, we had to be able to pay for it, and we did. So we were Texaco lessees for 3 years.
But Jack worked for the refinery when he got out of school, a refinery, and we decided that we would live on his wages and save my wages. So this is how we ended up with a little bit of money to start. And in those days, 2,800 was pretty good money, and got our started in the new business. And I was the bookkeeper, and he
Cashier, bookkeeper, driver of people who wanted to leave their cars for service.
Jack, just out of interest, and given the choices you had and the experience and training you had, what made you choose to enter that business?
Choose?
To enter the gas station business?
Well, I'd worked in a gas station all through high school, a BA gas station on 109th Street and down in the Garneau district called Fas Gas Service, to a guy, actually a couple who worked together in the service station, ran it, and I like the business. I like customers. I like to talk to people, as you can probably know over the years, and it seemed to fit. So we got a chance to lease this brand new Texaco station, and I was working for Texaco, so I quit working for them, and we started working for ourselves. Have been ever since, I guess. No, I worked out for quite a period of time. And
many people have started in that industry by leasing, acquiring, whatever, their first service
at
station,
age
but
22, yes.
many, almost as many who've started have not made it.
Well, a couple stories falling out of that is we built a tow truck on an old one-ton truck chassis. We had a welder, and I can weld, and so we built a tow truck out of it, and we hauled wrecked cars from all over northern Alberta we got together with some insurance adjusters downtown, and we were a little bit cheaper. We made sure we were a little bit cheaper than some of the other towing companies, and so we ran a tow truck on the side as well. Another thing we did, if you will probably remember that people had camp stoves and camp lanterns and mantles on the lantern that burnt high-test gas. And you bought high-test gas by taking your 1-gallon gas can down to the local hardware store, and in this case, you maybe remember buying high-test gas back of the hardware store on Gates and 51st Street. They had a tank there, and they'd pump it by hand into your can. So we decided we should get into the high-test gas canning business. So we bought a home canner for canning peas and beans and corn at home, and rigged it up with a barrel of gas outside the window of the service station, put some compressed air in it. We filled these cans and put the top on, and had a fancy roll-up label, and sold them to other service station dealers, because it was very convenient. You're going to go on a haul, you need some high-test gas, all you had to do is puncture the can and pour it in your device. And we ran that for a year, but the problem with it was the high-test gas business got very busy on long weekends, and so was the service station, so it was kind of conflictory. And from a time point of view, people are phoning wanting a case of. Oh, the other thing is, rather than buying cardboard boxes for the high-test gas, we sold a dozen cans, but we got free wine boxes from the Alberta liquor store, what was with the Treasury branch a block away up the street. They would save the boxes for us, and
So
we'd pack our 12
put the
cans
wine
of
in,
high-test
put the-
gas
Were they
in
labeled
free
gas
boxes,
or wine?
yeah. So that worked out pretty good. We got enough money out of that to furnish our house. We bought a house over on 72nd Avenue in Belgravia,
That's when we sold the station, though.
Yeah.
That's when we.
That's where I
sold.
first lived in
And
Edmonton.
we needed some furniture for it, so we sold
A
the,
farmer came along one day and said, you know, I'd really like to buy your service station. So
I really liked us because we
At
had
that
tires
time,
out in
we
front
had-
and set up and displays, and it was,
we had our
It was
first
quite nice.
child, too. And I thought, well, this is probably a good time to be home with Kathy. So so then we just sold it, and I was able to stay home instead of going to the work in the afternoons. And my mother, we lived in the basement suite of my mom and dad's home, and rather than my mother babysitting Kathy in the mornings, I could get away and then I could raise my family myself. So that was a very good move we had, and then we bought a house and fixed it up. But Jack had something in everything we bought when we first got married was green. He
guess whose favorite color is green?
He had to have green furniture, green car, green truck, green motorhome, green everything. And I got so tired of green, I can't look at green. Please don't wear green.
Oh, you like green grass and green trees?
Yeah, well, that's fine, but it was too much. Anyways, that's the story of our getting started. And
But
so then
you'd sold your first service station, and
Jack
what plan did
he
you
went
have?
up north.
I went to work for a company called Sanford Oils. Sanford Oils was a project of a guy by the name of Bill Sanford, who had been the regional manager for the British American Oil Company in Edmonton for years. And a very nice guy, I learned a lot from him. I even have a Sanford oil can out there I can show you with the brand on it. And became, first of all, a salesman.
Does that mean you have to go up north?
Yes.
Um,
That's chapter 2 of that story, not with Sanford. Sanford was what then was called a petroleum jobber, and sold farm gas to the farmers around Edmonton and anybody that truckers. We had a couple of trucking companies, and every Friday I'd have to go down and collect from them. Well, one trucking company was terrible at paying their bill, and they were always on the edge about ready to fall off. So Friday afternoon was a trip down there, but I basically, along with the sales manager, a fellow named Arnie Phillipson, decided that we would try and get the Sanford brand up on some service stations. So we made some calls on some little independent service stations that were other brands, and convinced them that they should be a Sanford brand service station. So we give them a sign, and a sign in those days was a 4x8 sheet of plywood with Sanford Gas on the front of it, and it hung with 2 hinges on the arm that used to have North Star or White Rose or whatever on it. And we had 3 or 4 dealers within a year, and it worked out pretty good. So we could make money on the gasoline spread.
One thing you
you were
did.
doing that on the side, kind of?
Well, it was just Sanford. I was
Yeah.
working for Sanford.
One thing you did, you went in to see your manager, and he had his paycheck laying there. Jack knows how to read upside down. So
You do that when
he
you're
knew what
selling.
he got, and he knew what this guy got. And he said to himself, I am going to be in that chair one of these days.
That guy was that
Bill Sanford was paying
Yeah.
himself $5,000 a month, and I was getting $425 a month and a company car. So there's a little difference.
Is there a moral in that story?
Yes, get on your own and write your own paycheck. Sanford Oils got sold back to British American Oil Company. The business was getting large and was getting profitable, so BA Oil came to him and said, let's buy it. And they put it together with a company called Purity 99 Oil, who you might remember. There'd be some Purity stations in Red Deer. So I worked for the guy from Purity 99, who became my manager. And my first task was to start to make some money at a company-operated Purity 99 station down the street. And so I went down and did some investigation. And I think there was about 10 or 12 salesmen for Purity 99 working out of the Edmonton office for all of northern Alberta. So I found that they were all buying their gas there. They were paying for their gas, getting a discount on it, and getting all the repair work on their cars done for nothing at the same time as they were being paid mileage for all the mileage they drove and on their expense account. So I said, well, this has got to stop. We'll never make money here if we're giving away all our services. There's no way. And so I got in trouble with my boss very quickly because he was doing the same thing. He was getting double paid for his car. And I got in touch with my former manager, who was his boss now. And he said, well, you better do something like go somewhere else because you got this stupid guy as your manager. So I left Sanford Oils and joined Pacific 66. Do you remember Pacific 66?
Yep. There
Red
was an
and white
American
service
company.
stations. There was one down on Gates Avenue and about just by the Safeway store there, actually where the Safeway store is. And so I joined them as their commercial industrial salesman for Northern Alberta. And believe me, I drove lots of miles.
You're still in Edmonton?
Yeah, living in Edmonton. But Joan was at home.
We had our home,
the kids?
and then we had our son 3 years after Kathy was born. John was born, and I loved being at home with the family. But he was always out of town. The only day I would always plan something with the children and him, and us a picnic or a skidoo trip in the winter when the ice is it's on the river, and then we'd go and have a winter roast or something. So I always planned something for the day he was home, but that was really hard having him away all the time, and I'm managing 2 little ones at home. So carry on.
And I covered Northern Alberta and Northeast BC because Pacific had this refinery at Taylor, BC, and they were the big power up there. So most of my work was involved there. We became the supplier for the Bennett Dam. It was on TV the other night, a picture of the Bennett Dam, the big curving, when it was being built, and millions of gallons in those days of diesel fuel to build that dam, and it was a very big account. So about once a month I spent a week up in the Peace River block talking to all the various people that were involved. And there was a camp set up, hundreds, I guess probably, 500 people in the camp, and had people, they kept the little side story is the Firestone tire dealer had a tank outside his place and his place of business, and he said, well, Firestone and Texaco have always been, so I get my gas from Texaco in Fort St. John. They bring it out with the truck. So I was supposed to make sure that everybody used Pacific 66. So I went down and got the town manager, and we went down and met this guy and said, come on outside. And the town manager said, here's the deal. You can buy from this guy who's Pacific 66, or you can pack this whole thing up, your building and all those stacks of tires and everything else. You can move to Fort St. John if you want to buy Texaco. What would you like to do? The guy looked at me and said, I'd like to buy Pacific 66. So we shook hands. And that's the way things worked in Northern Alberta.
On a handshake.
Exactly. And so we had a lot of fun. I drove a lot of miles, wore out a couple of cars. But one day the real estate guy for Pacific 66 said, I'm going down to Red Deer to look at a service station down there. Do you want to come along for a ride? And I've always liked Red Deer because it was went through here when I finished my apprenticeship in Calgary. I had to go to SAIT. That's another story for another day. But I always thought, gee, they got a highway through town, and it's a nice place. I'd like to know more about it. So I said, sure, go along. So Ed Disler, who was the real estate guy, and I drove down, and the real estate guy had an office kitty corner. You remember the little grocery store on 52nd Street on the north side there? That was there for years and years and years. Anyway, right on the corner was this real estate guy. I walked in, and Ed introduced himself and introduced me, and he sat in the chair, didn't even get up to shake our hands. and said, well, it's that place over there, and it was Paul Crawford's garage. And Paul, of course, was the ex-mayor of Red Deer at the time, or
sold
before
Packards.
that. And so Ed said, well, we're not looking for that. We want a piece of land, and we're going to build a Pacific 66 station with a big canopy out the front. We need a bigger lot to start with, and we want to build our style station on it. So no, I don't want it. So we left. And he ended up buying for Pacific the site down on Gates by the Safeway store. Yeah, I looked at this place and said, that might be all right. So I came down on my own and talked to Paul Crawford, who said, yeah, I want to sell this place. I'm getting old. Paul was blind or close to being blind, and he would pump gas into people's cars. And he'd say, I left my specs inside. How much is on the pump? And people pretty soon learned they could short him a couple bucks on every sell. And so he wasn't making any money and wanted to get out of the business very badly. So we bought that corner for $45,000 with $5,000 down, and away we went.
And that would be in,
1964. And our lawyer was Tom Chapman.
And when
We had met him at that point,
and
but
when your family found out we were moving, we went for a walk through the gardens in front of the city hall,
City Hall Park.
and we were all crying. We had to move. Kathy had gone to grade 1 in Edmonton and had friends, and John was 4 years old. But it was moving what was really bad, at that stage. But we made it. We moved into a rented home. My mother and dad, pardon me, I'm just gonna have to do this.
so you had to sell your home in
We
your
put
lovely
it up
home
for
in
sale.
Edmonton.
We put it up for sale, but it didn't sell immediately. And we came to and lived in this rented home. And the lady next door would babysit John while I went to work and Kathy was in school. So that worked all right because, again, I had to take over the accounting, and it was hard, but where I'm used to hard work being on a farm. I'm used to working whenever there's something to do, get at it and do it. So that's how I did that. So we got our business started. And now do you want to continue?
Sure. The Crawford had a property, if you remember, that was the hook that went around past the elevators. You came down, the bowling alley was there.
52nd Street, yeah.
And Imperial Lumber was across the street, and then you had the street hooked and went down along past the railway station.
Right.
Well, it was that corner, but the west end of it was this old garage, repair garage, because Paul Crawford had at one time been the dealer for a brand of cars. I think it was Packard he had.
Yeah, it was.
And so the first thing we did, Joan's dad came down, was my old scoutmaster.
Mother and dad came down to help us.
And we tore the thing down and flattened it out, filled the holes, and it basically made a service station out of it. One of the things left over from the North Country was Pacific Petroleum's used to loan tanks to drilling rigs that were working in the oil field north of Slave Lake. They were all accounts of mine in Pacific, so there was 3 or 4 different people had borrowed tanks. So I said to Pacific, my former manager, what do you want to do with those tanks? He said, we don't want to throw them away. We can't be bothered with them. So I knew where they were, so I made contact with a trucker I had met up there trying to sell hemp fuel. I said, tell you what, there's 4 or 5 tanks, different rigs around here. Can you truck those tanks to Red Deer for me? And he said, well, yeah, but I got to get paid something. I said, you can have all the diesel fuel that's in the tanks. All you have to do is pump them out before you load them up. He said, you got a deal. So guess what? We had 4 or 5 new tanks in Red Deer in a couple of weeks. And so we...
Did you put them on that site?
Oh, yeah. So we dug a big hole, and I can remember I'm jumping ahead of myself. We had permission to have bulk fuel on that site.
From the city.
A guy by the name
letter.
of John McLean was the city building inspector, you might remember back then. And I had a letter saying we could sell bulk fuel from that site as well as retail, as well as repair cars. So got the tanks, we got them in the hole. The same guy, that name escapes me, that dug the basement for the Hudson Bay store downtown. He's that back dirt mover. Dug our hole for us, piled the dirt up, and I'm up there one night, and this guy came along and said, "I'm the Texaco agent. You can't sell bulk fuel here. I'm an alderman besides, and I'm going to stop you from opening your service station here, because you got to have a service station like everybody else, and you got to have a bulk plant. You can't put the two together." I said, "Well, I got permission from the city, and I got permission from the province. What more do I need?" Well, we had a meeting last night, the service station operators. And we decided that we're not going to cooperate with you at all, and so you better shut this thing down. So what they did is I had two brothers, Dutch boys, the Groot brothers. Does that ring a bell with you?
Yes.
Back in the early days?
Yeah.
We're doing the plumbing on this tank installation, and they came to me the next day and they said, "I'm sorry, but we can't do your plumbing anymore. The guys all got together last night and we will never do any more service work for them if we work for you. So we're sorry, we won't charge you for what we've done so far," which was decent of them, "but we can't come to work here. We can't afford to lose all that repair business." So I'm putting pipe in service stations, and Joan's bringing me my dinner every night in a bag, and away we went. We got the plumbing done, and some islands poured, and we were in business with Parkland Oil Products Limited, with the standard 4x8 sheet of plywood sign hanging from the old White Rose sign.
So you've submerged the storage tanks and used them.
Yep. Well, we had enough storage then that we could direct haul gas from Redmond, take a full tanker load. We didn't have to use the White Rose bulk plant. So in the middle of this, the White Rose salesman comes by and says, "You can't have a White Rose sign there if you're not going to buy from," I forget the agent's name, but White Rose bulk. And I said, "Well, I have no intention of buying White Rose bulk, because I had a deal put together to back up loads of truckloads of gas at the Royalite refinery in Edmonton from my days up north." I knew a couple of people. And, "Well, you can't do that. We're not going to stand by. We're going to take that sign down." I said, "You go ahead and take it down." So what does he do? He waits till 4 o'clock the next day, and he sends out a crew to take this sign down. It was pretty narrow, and if they were going to work with a winch truck, so I ran them off the lot. Said, "Get lost, come back at some morning."
It was a busy time for us.
We had people lined up because we were selling gas cheap. We had 3 cents off. And they finally got their sign, but we used their sign pole. They didn't take the sign pole down, just took the sign down. So we hung our sign on.
It gave you contact with
That was a
White
heck
Rose.
of a business, I'll tell you what. We did very, very well there for years. We did tires, we did repair, we did lube work, we did tune-ups, we did all kinds of stuff, and had a bulk truck worked out of there, our own little 1-ton truck for delivering fuel to farmers.
And then we
heating oil.
kind of branched out and had dealers in various places.
In central Alberta.
Under the Parkland name.
20-something that we had.
And you were using the Parkland name by
Name,
now?
yeah,
I would
Parkland brand.
Go
fuel.
out there in the evenings to teach them how to handle their bookwork and get them set up. And then I'd be coming home at night, and I thought, "Lord help, am I going to make it home?" So I'd open the window wide, and I'd chew on carrots, because they make noise, and you're chewing on these carrots all the way home. I made it, that's right. But that's how we, really worked hard to get this going. And then you can go say,
First dealers we set up was the Leedale store west of Rimby. I don't know if you know where Leedale is.
Why don't you just go into when we sold?
Oh, okay, well,
I mean, you sold the Crawford property and
yeah, we built that up. We had, I think it was 16 or 18 Parkland dealers around central Alberta, Leslieville, Rocky Mountain House, Lacombe, Ponoka, Innisfil. Anyway, it was going great guns. We had a trucker with 2 trucks hauling gas for us steady. Things were going well, and along came Bob Braun, who you mentioned. And to
Yes,
make
sir.
a long story quite short,
Turbo.
we had a meeting in our kitchen and sold Parkland Oil Products to Turbo. Turbo is another story for another day. And I joined Turbo as a vice president marketing and a director of their board. And,
Well, we
and you
couldn't-
got to
We
become
couldn't have another gasoline business for 5
Restrictive
years.
covenant
We're
for 5
restricted
years.
covenant. So I got to have 5 years at home with my children. That's right. And I was happy again.
So I joined Turbo. One of the things I wanted to do was learn how Turbo was a public company. So I wanted to learn what public companies were all about and how they worked, and ended up going to Toronto with several trips with Bob. I was sort of the second guy in the train, but still in all, I met a lot of people in Toronto, learned the pitches of what people wanted in a public company, complete disclosure, honesty, all the things that Turbo stock, of course, went well, very well. So I learned something about accounting for a public company, an annual report every year, which you got involved in. So we put in about 4.5 years, and one day, was in our office. My office was in the back where the oil was stored in the Crawford block next door. We put a door in from the grease bay into the building next door and built a couple of offices. Do you remember Bruce Miller? Miller Motors? That rings
Yes.
a bell with you?
Oh, yes.
Bruce Miller? He's
Is,
our age.
is he the Rotarian?
Yeah, we was.
Rotarian in
Yes.
Calgary.
Yep,
His
yep,
wife is a writer.
yep, for the Advocate.
She's
She's,
Yes, I remember.
yeah, well, Bruce was my sales manager, or our sales manager at Parkland Oil. We worked together for years. In fact, we're inviting him to a luncheon here in a couple of weeks to
You're off
get caught
topic.
up in the news. I'm off topic, yes, I am.
That's right.
But
Anyway, 5 years he commuted from Red
Deer to Calgary for meetings
But he
and
was
board
home.
meetings and,
He was home weekends and he was home most evenings and stuff. So that was okay. One thing I didn't mention is that when we got married and lived in the basement suite of my parents, but when we moved to our home, we couldn't afford a washing machine. So we had, just, a modern one. We had a washing machine, but no dryer. The washing machine is the one where you got to put the clothes through the wringer and hang them on the line.
Yeah.
And I would hang these clothes on the line, and there was this one bloomin' bird that kept always sitting on the clothesline and
he was shitting on the clothesline, sitting on the clothesline.
messing up my clothes. And
He was
so
pooping out.
one time he sat pretty close to where the line went in, and I gave it a good jerk, and I cut his legs off. And I was so worried that I had done that to the bird. But anyway, we got rid of his mess that he used to make. So after a while, I think when we sold to Turbo, we had some money, so I got a washer and a dryer. And it's just like heaven. So that was my thing. But after he worked his 5 years,
I'm going to add to your story. The day my twin brother and I went to university was the day my father bought a dishwasher.
got a
'Cause
dishwasher.
He just lost
Well,
his two
I hadn't had a
washers.
dishwasher. I don't think dishwashers were in then. But anyway, he actually before the 5 years, he started sort of buying service stations. But he had to. You tell. You bought this.
So you stayed with Turbo
For 5 years.
for the 5 years.
Well, about 4.5 years in, I got a phone call one morning. The guy on the other end of the phone was Louis Hansen. Now, I don't know if you know
That's
Louis.
the 59.
I'd leave that for later. Louis had the old service station at the foot of the hill over here, where the original Highway 2 came down the hill past the church and
that's
past
right.
Louis' place, and there was a Purity 99 station on the other corner with a little old woman that ran it, and then worked its way down across the old bridge here. So Louis called me and he said, "Do you want to buy a service station?" I said, "No, I can't really buy one right now." "Well, I want to sell you mine, so get your ass over here and let's make a deal." So I said, "Well, we can go have a talk anyway." So it turns out he's got this place with the property, the building, a tank truck, a half-ton pickup truck, and a tractor trailer, and he wanted $110,000, I believe, for it all, with $5,000 or $10,000 down, which we had. So we bought Louis Hansen's service station.
You were still living in Red Deer?
In Red Deer, oh yeah,
for Turbo.
we're still in Red Deer, still in Red Deer.
I'm working for Turbo.
and working for Turbo. But we called it Turbo Northside Fas Gas Service. Now the Fas Gas has a story with it, because we took some holidays after we joined Turbo, and we went down to Texas one time on a holiday and went for a drive around various places in Texas and looked and watched, and we got into a motel in a small town. I can't begin to tell you where it was. Got up. This is the only place, the only motel in town, I think. I don't know. Anyway, got up the next morning, looked out the window, and across the street was a closed service station. And it had the old Texaco round sign with a pole, and somebody had painted over the Texaco part and put Fas Gas. And we said, "Holy cow, that's a neat name. I wonder if anybody has that copyrighted in Canada." So when we came home, we got Tom Chapman to check it out, and by golly, nobody had Fas Gas in Canada, so that's where the name came from, right out of Texas.
Was it a sign where they just forgot to put the T?
Yeah, well, it was kind of a closed
No,
service
it was
station. It was abandoned.
abandoned service station, yeah.
It was this old sign, rusty sign, but it was a neat name.
Yeah.
So we came home with that, and that's where we got the name Fas Gas from. So we operated for 1 year over there as a Texaco dealer, Turbo dealer, sorry. And at the end of that period of time,
So you
turned
were
out-
allowed to do that in your contract or your?
well,
As long as we called
it was
it
a turbo
Turbo,
station.
and
We
Turbo
bought
was
Turbo
taking the
brand
money.
fuel. We bought from Turbo.
But Turbo was taking the money from it.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And the board knew about it. Everything was above board, and everybody agreed. But when the year was up,
But
we
when
would-
the 5 years were up,
Right.
then we bought it back, got it.
so
So that was
we found out that there was a public, shortly after that, we found out there was a public company for sale that ran a feedlot southeast of Lacombe called Parkland Industries Limited. And they had started a cattle feeding business. They wanted to get into the abattoir business, and sold shares in this thing. Henderson, is the Henderson name in Lacombe ring a bell with you? The Hendersons had a feedlot, but the Henderson brothers were shareholders in this thing, along with a fellow from Toronto by the name of Donald Moore. And it was a public company traded on the Calgary Stock Exchange. And Moore wanted to get out of it because it wasn't making any money. So we made a deal to buy Parkland Industries Limited from Don Moore, the control block of
And
stock.
got the public company rights.
And what we really wanted was the public company and the listing and everything out of it. We ran the feedlot for 2 or 3 years, and finally sold the feedlot to the employees for nothing down and something in lieu of wages in the meantime. But we didn't. It's impossible to build a public company around the cattle feeding business, because you make money when fat cattle are high or barley's low. But if they're both up, you don't make any money. If they're both low, you don't make any money. And you can't forecast ahead,
No.
which is what you have to do in a public company, because people want to buy stock in it, but they want you to tell them that you're going to make more money next year than you made last year. So we started with Fas
think it was
Gas
19.
Northside Service. Pretty soon we got a dealership in Lacombe under Fas Gas. And then we went to Ponoka. And then we went, and away we went. And I think within 4 or 5 years, he must have had 15 or 20 dealers. And
Dealers or your own stations,
these are Fas Gas
Stations.
brand stations.
right?
And we supplied the fuel, and we got a. What we did when we started, I still believe this. Parkland Oil Products owned the gas in the tanks, and so we could set the price in a particular community. So if we went to Innisfail and we wanted to sell gas 2 cents cheaper than everybody else, we simply said to the dealer, lower your pumps on Sunday, and Monday morning open at 2 cents less. He got a commission on everything he sold and got all the money from the oil, the chocolate bars, the potato chips, the car wash if there happened to be one, and ran the service station, but got a commission on his gas. He didn't buy it. It was our gas, so we could set the price on it. So we were competitive, let's put it that way, in most places, and started to capture significant volume. And it was working great for us. I guess at this point is something that we both learned a long time ago. What does every business need?
A profit.
A customer. With no customers, I don't care whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an Indian chief, you got to have customers. And you get customers by frankly, the dumbest guy in the street gets to set the price. So sometimes we were the dumbest people on the street, and we set the price. The price is very important in gasoline, and you notice all gas stations display the price in big letters.
True.
They learned that too, that it's important to tell people before you pull in what the price is going to be. That's what builds the gas station business. So playing on those things, we built Parkland,
Anyway,
Fas Gas.
I was back to work again,
Was she ever?
but the kids were in school then, so that was not quite so bad. And I always made it a really important thing is that I would be home before they got home. And in those days, they walked to school and walked home. And so that when they came in and said, "Mom, I'm home," I could answer. I thought it was really important to be there when they arrived home. But I was the assistant corporate secretary of Parkland Industries. Parkland Fuel, they changed it so often. Fuel, we dropped the beef, of course, and then we had, then now it's just Parkland Corp. It was Corp, now it's just plain Parkland.
Parkland.
But anyway, now they got rid of the fuel. Oh, it's Parkland
Yeah,
Corp now.
Corp,
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, so anyway, I was back, because of having a public company, there's a lot of stipulations that you have to follow and do, an annual report and
Audited
we had
statements,
to have directors,
all of the right things.
all the things that had to get put together, so that was sort of my job, and we did have an accountant to do the bookkeeping for a change, which was good.
I can't let this pass. Our first annual report was printed in green ink on white paper.
Oh, it was so awful.
It was ugly. It was ugly.
I've still got a copy of it. But one of these days, I decided I'm going to just really say that nothing in our house is going to be green. We're not going to have green cars. We're not going to have green motorhomes. We're not going to have green anything else. So now we mostly have blue, so that's good.
I see in here, top segment of the industry, niche, why successful? Well, let's look at what Parkland Corp today is. It has 2,800 outlets in North America. It's the 27th largest company in sales in Canada. And when you look at all the banks and you look at all the oil companies and you look at all the car companies that are in Canada, it's 26th on the top of the largest corporations in Canada.
That's
In dollar sales.
a fairly large jump from
Yeah,
where you left
from
off.
Louis Hansen service station. It sure is. So everybody thinks it's a tough business. The major oil companies don't like running service stations because there's too many holes, too many leaks if you don't do it right. And remember we talked about paying commission and owning the gas. They don't like that. The credit department of major oil companies doesn't like it because they've got credit out all over to all these dealers out there. They don't like that. So they like the dealer to pay cash for the gas. Now the dealer's locked into what he paid for that gas. He doesn't want to cut the price 2 cents because it's his money. And why would he want to do that? So just think about it for a minute or two. The way the majors want to run service stations doesn't work. Go here to Costco someday and watch the pumps at Costco, and if there isn't 25 cars lined up to buy cheap gasoline, I'll pay for the next 25 because they are the price setters in Edmonton. They're the dumbest people on the street right now. But people value cheap gas. And that's why when gas is so expensive as it is right now, it's in the news every night. Gasoline's expensive. People can't afford to buy gasoline. They have to stay home.
Well, we've only got this
So-
far.
That probably, I hope, answers the tough segment in the industry. It's how you want to operate it. You can still make money in the gasoline business. It's still there. Then you say Parkland Properties.
Oh, well, we hung in there for a lot of,
Just a little bit before we get there, because that's a huge jump from
Nothing
the
to
number of
something.
stations, 1 or 2, and the distribution network that you set up to or what you brought Parkland to by the end of the 20th century.
Yeah.
What were some of the major steps, major investments, major changes that made you successful when most of the other big companies, except maybe J.D. Irving, were not successful?
Well, we looked after the nickels and dimes. We made sure that we were competitive on price on the street, at least competitive on price. We built service stations cheap. We could put a service station, the one in Black Falls, if you've ever seen it, is one of the old style service stations we built. We built them on a cement slab. We had a local contractor who learned how to build service stations our way, cheap. All the hot air ducts were in the slab, so when you poured the floor, you had all your heating system half done. Put up 2x4 walls, put a flat roof on it. We could build service stations for $55,000 a piece. Believe me, there was a whole bunch of them. Lacombe, Black Falls, Rocky Mountain House. Oh, Rocky Mountain House had a cafe in it.
So you went the building route as
And we
opposed
built them and we owned them.
as opposed to buying somebody?
Well, we bought Innisfil. It had an ex-Esso station, and it had 2 bays on it. So we converted the 2 service bays into 2 car wash bays, where you put your quarters in the box, and we got out of the car service business.
Well,
So we did both.
Majors were cutting back, were they not?
Yes.
And you were expanding.
Well, the majors, a lot of them had independent dealers who were serviced by their local bulk dealer. They had a service station on Main Street with an SO sign on it, and the guy had to do something to make money, so he had 2 bays. He repaired cars, he did brakes, did all the changed oil, filters, serviced cars. Most of them had a mechanic, like we did at the Texaco station in Edmonton. And so the SO stations, BA stations, the Purity 99s, all North Stars, were all owned by, most of them, someone else, the local dealer. And so we came along and said, hey, you want to sell your service station? Yeah, I want to retire and have a motel out in BC where the weather's nice. Well, let's talk about it. What do you want for your service station? Well, $100,000 for it. What are you going to do if we give you $100,000 for it? Well, I'm going to go to BC and sit in the sun and put my feet up instead of being around this crowny place all the time. So we'd say, okay, well, tell you what, we'll give you $10,000. You move to BC and we'll pay X dollars and you take a first mortgage on it. So you know you're going to get your money. And bye-bye, away you go to BC. And that applied to a whole bunch of people who said, that's exactly what I want. Because if we pay you $100,000, you're going to go down to the bank and you're going to get 4% or 3% on it with all that money. We'll pay you 5%. And you know what the security is because you've been here for 20 years. Oh, okay. And away we went.
No, what a great deal. But as You also got involved in very successfully in distributing, did you not? Like to your own station?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well,
then
we held
beyond.
a brand. If we
had our
came to
own-
town
we had
with
our own
Fas Gas,
trucking- We had our own trucking company.
and we had our own trucking company. We had, one time, we had 5 tractor trailers going. Turbo didn't particularly love the trucking business, but a little story goes with that, that when you're competing against big companies, the Trimax of the world with 25 or 30 or 50 trucks in Alberta, every service station dealer that has to pay for his gas wants his gas delivered Friday afternoon. Do you want to know why? Because his check doesn't clear the bank until Monday morning. So he has the weekend sales to pay for the gas that he's selling over the weekend. And so trying to get a truck to deliver Thursday or Friday from one of the big trucking companies is next to impossible. And if you phone the boss, they say, well, you know, we got 7 trucks working with for Esso, and we got 6 working for British American Oil, and you want us to pull one of their trucks off to go haul your one load of gas? Sorry, we can't look after you. So we got in our trucking business, and we had $1 million a year coming out of the trucking side of things by itself.
And, you
You
became,
gotta do what you gotta do.
you know, not just for delivering fuel, but you were delivering all the other things, all the other products that a gas station required too, were you?
Well, the majors were doing whatever they could do to hinder you, quite frankly.
That's-
They didn't want cut price people around the country because they destroyed their marketplace for them. So,
That's changed though all through. and now
well, the
they-
government's very concerned about meeting. As days or months or years went by, we bought the refinery from Shell at Bowden. And I was asked to join the Canadian, what the heck was it called? But anyway, the group of vice presidents of marketing for all the major oil companies, and we used to meet in Ottawa. So all of a sudden, I'm dealing with the guys I used to hate. But it was interesting going to these meetings and what concerns they had and how they did it and how they tried to manage control in Canada of the downstream marketing business.
Well, because I was going to ask, how could a Western company coming out of a small town called Red Deer be successful?
Because we were a refiner.
Tough business.
Once we were refiners, we graduated. We went up to the level of the vice president. I've had meals with the vice president of Imperial and the vice president of British American. And we used to have 2-day meetings in Ottawa about twice a year.
Mhm.
So I'm the little mouse on the corner of the wall, listening to what's going on, listening to what they have to say about independence in Eastern Canada who get it beyond their britches. And the discussion would be, well, what are we going to do to stop that? How can we got to get that son of a bitch under control. You know, and it's totally illegal. Totally illegal. Go to jail for stuff like that. And we just sit there and listen, or I just sit there and listen.
Well, how then did you get into Ontario?
Never went to Ontario. I
No,
didn't
we
want
did. We
to.
were
Turbo
just
went
in
to Ontario.
Western Canada and
North.
north.
Margins in Whitehorse have always been wonderful. So we had a bulk station. We bought a little company up there. The guy had started a little company of his own. So we bought him out, and then we expanded from Whitehorse every direction we could. But you could make yourself 10 or 11 or 12 cents a gallon up there where you made 2 cents down here. It was a wonderful market. But it did get cold in the winter.
I certainly found it reassuring when I drove from Red Deer to Tuktuk and back in 10 days.
Yes.
And I could stop at all the Fas Gas stations along the way.
Well, there you go, you see.
It quite surprised me, but it was very pleasing.
Well, you know, we had trucks based in Whitehorse, and in the Yukon there was an Indian reserve over toward the Alaska side of the boundary. And they decided to build a school for this reserve. And we were asked to provide the first load of heating oil to that brand new school out of Whitehorse. And the truck that took the heating oil on a brand new road that they dozed out of the forest and just, you know, they make drilling company roads that are rougher than hell, was driven by a lady truck driver that we had for years up there. And everybody cheered when she got there with a load of diesel fuel to keep the school warm. What was her name? Do you
Lovely
remember?
I
story.
don't remember her name.
But you also expanded very successfully into BC.
Not in a big way.
North.
We didn't have the right connections. Chevron had the refinery in Prince George, and there was BA and Imperial in Vancouver with refineries. None of the three loved us.
Well,
If you want.
I think we had, 424 outlets. Is that the right number?
Yeah, at the end of the day.
At the end, when I decided in
454.
454, and I decided I've had enough of this, I'm going to retire. I was, how old was I? Good Lord. How old were we when we retired?
We were just tired.
No, retired. It was 80, not 80, 67. I was 67.
Yes.
And you were 68. So I retired. And I retired and said, this is it. You know, anything that they're going to expand to would be out east or U.S. or someplace, and then Jack would just plain not be home anymore again. So when I retired, I knew he would. I had already figured that out. He'd see what I was having such a wonderful time volunteering and, you know, doing things with the family.
That you
and
wanted to do.
what I wanted out of there, yeah, because we'd been there, I don't know, 21 years or something. But it just was really ready. I was ready to go. So after I went for a year, he decided he would retire too. So he did, and we had a big retirement party, and then I decided, I guess, we had bought a new motorhome and did a trip across Canada, all the way across
2 months.
Canada and down. Yeah, it took 2 months and all the way down and into the U.S. It was wonderful to see the difference in all of the provinces. We didn't do BC with the motorhome, but we had to fly there for he was the chair of the Canadian Western Bank and had a meeting, so we went to there too. But we did all of these provinces, and every one was different. You know, I mean, like they had their own little different ones. PEI, it's a little one as big as what population of little more than Red Deer. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and it's got a full government and a full everything there.
Yeah.
And
And a
it's
couple
just
of
the
senators.
littlest place you can, you know, we didn't stay there long, but we enjoyed that. And it just, you know, everyone that you went to, and, you know, Ottawa, and we didn't go, we went to, where did we go in
On a trip east?
yeah.
Down as far as Boston a little bit.
No,
so
yeah,
farther
then we
south
got
of
into
Boston.
the States and
Then we
went
came back to the
Boston
States.
and then came back, but
It was fall, the leaves were turning, and we were heading west. And this old truck driver was just having lots of fun.
we loved
It didn't take nearly as long to get home.
And
as
the
we did
motorhome
going.
was a nice colors of grays and reds and stuff. So
One of the essentials about being being Canadian, is to go across the country.
well, we found though that life
over Lake Superior.
slowed down as you go across, and you get out of Ottawa, and you get out of you know, you get into like
Quebec and
Nova
Gatineau.
Scotia and PEI and stuff. It really was slower. In fact, one little thing that happened, I was buying some quilts, I think that was in Prince Edward Island.
Yes, it was.
And this lady was going to wrap this parcel up. Well, it took her forever. You know how we are. We want this, just slap it into a bag and here you go. She took forever to bundle this up, and she asked us what we were doing, and we had just left Parkland. And we gave her a card or something, we must have, because she wrote a letter to us later, because we told her she could buy shares in our company if she wanted to. To be darned if she didn't buy some shares.
And they went up in price.
But they had
She wrote us a
time.
letter of how
They
happy
had
she
time
was.
to visit, to visit and talk, and it was interesting because the further you went, the slower things became, and they weren't quite so rushed like we are. So that was a great trip. So that was sort of the end of our celebration for retirement.
Can I
Before-
interject one thing?
Of course.
We left the motorhome and we flew over to Newfoundland because we wanted to see all the provinces in Canada while we were there. And
Super.
rented a car and
And
drove to a bed
in
and breakfast.
breakfast, yeah.
Up there's a big bay, Conception Bay, something like that. So
is,
a bed
yeah.
and breakfast, and after we had supper, we went down to the docks. And there's two old boys sitting on lawn chairs there and a bottle of something under one of the lawn chairs.
Yeah.
So we got talking to
It's
these
called
people.
Swish.
And where you found by, and it went from there. Newfies are great talkers, there's no question about it. So one of the things is it's dark and there's all these lights out in the middle of the bay. So I said, well, what's going on out
Boats
there?
bobbing.
They're chicken squid by, and that's calamari when it gets to Calgary, and it's expensive on your plate, And I said, well, don't you get any of the calamari? No, we get calamari all the time, but it's expensive, and so that's how we make our money here. Then we made a wrong turn, got down. We thought we were on the highway going to where we wanted to go, but it turned out that went down over the edge of the hill and ended up on a dock. You couldn't go any further, so we had to turn the motorhome around and.
We didn't have the motorhome. We had to rent a
No,
car.
we rented a car. That's right.
Yes.
Turned around, went back. So I see a guy walking in coveralls coming down to the road from his house. So we thought, well, we'll stop and ask him about where's the highway because we made the wrong turn. Well, where are you from, by? And half an hour later, he told us where the highway was. But, I got a buddy, he drives the truck out in Toronto. Do you know him? His name's Roger. Or Calgary, or Fort McMurray, whatever else. But they're unique. They really are. And they most of them, I'm sure, are as square and as honest as you get out for people, but very much locally oriented. The economy of the towns is not good. Most of their money, several of them said, my brother-in-law's working in Fort McMurray and he's making big money and his wife's got a house and they've just bought a new house or they're building a house and gee, he's doing really well and what's it like in Fort McMurray? But it was really an experience, and I think every Canadian at some time in their life should go to Newfoundland because it's part of Canada, but it just thinks on another totally different level altogether. But we enjoyed it. It was fun.
There's a lovely, you were on Conception Day, and I stayed at a place called Paradise.
Yeah.
And this chap, he was a senior psychiatrist at the mental hospital in St. John, but that's where his home was.
Yeah.
And I could tell many stories, but one of the ones I learned is that you can't tell a Newfie joke unless you're a Newfie.
Well, that's true. But it was a real experience. There's no doubt about it, and we enjoyed it. We took it for what it was. They don't want to move. They don't want a lifestyle change. They don't expect that everybody's going to have a computer in their living room. They're quite content with what they were doing.
The province with the highest percent of houses with no mortgage in Canada
I'm sure it is.
Newfoundland.
Well,
And if
because
you were
they
a mortgage company, you'd know why, too.
They were working out here in Canada, or
Very true.
where did Toronto or Canada, or this is where they worked, and they had brought all their money back there to build homes and things, and they had
They want to retire
beautiful
there.
homes.
They all want to go home.
Yeah,
Yep, back to the rock.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
This chap's neighbor was an NHL hockey player by the name of Howie Meeker,
Yes.
and he broadcast.
That's Matt back in my day when I was playing hockey.
Yeah, it would be. I've had the luxury of a remarkable 10 days on the island, and with many stories you could tell. But before we leave the subject, would you just, bring us up to date on when you left Parkland? What was the financial status and the size of it, and how is it now? If it's changed significantly?
Parkland Fuel Corp had 454 branded stations. We had two brands. One was Fas Gas, which you see as Fas Gas Plus now, and the other was Bilo. The Bilo brand was used for independent dealers where the independent guy had a service station, and instead of Esso or something else, we would brand them Bilos. They bought their gas wholesale. They got whatever margin that was allowed in their community. All we owned was the sign and the decals on the pump. So we had quite a few Bilo service stations as well, added to our volume, but all we got on those was a wholesale markup, so it was pretty skinny going, but it's still profitable. And built our volume, which made cheaper buying power, gave us more buying power to do exchanges with other refiners and all the stuff that goes with it. Parkland Fuel Corp, just in passing, changed their name to Parkland Corp about 2 years ago because of the government saying that we're going to be out of gasoline by 2050 and we're going to be 50% by 2030. I hope those numbers are right. So obviously we've got to look to the future and decide how we're going to run our company. And it's not going to be only in the fuel business. So they decided to get into stores and all kinds of things. And this little thing has been going for about 2 years now. These are packaged by a company called OTR Canada, but the brand is 59th Street Market. And guess where 59th Street is? It just happens to be the street that goes past station number 1, 3 blocks from here in North Red Deer. And I've brought these packages over for that reason, to be able to say the 59th Street Market is obviously in all the Fas Gas service stations across Canada, down into the States and the West Indies, where they have ship fueling, airport fueling. They're buying stations in Colorado and the western states. And again, it's 2,800 outlets now. So it's expanded considerably over the years. This is the kind of thing, when you think about it, if you're driving an electric car and you need to charge, you're going from Calgary to Edmonton, you're gonna be at some fixed point for at least a half an hour, even if it's a super fast charger.
They have lots of
up to
places
3 hours.
plug in.
So if you're in the Bowden service station and you have to get your battery charged in your electric car, you're going to be in beautiful Bowden, 2 miles out of Bowden, at a service station. So what can Parkland sell you or do for you for 2 hours? Well, how about a little movie theater? How about a computer that you rent? How about a restaurant? How about all kinds of things? But what are people going to want while they stop to get their electric car charged? And I don't think we've got there yet. But think about it. There's captive audiences at that service station that are looking for something to do, and half of them have children. So maybe a children's zoo, maybe rides, maybe a little Ferris wheel, all kinds of things that you could make extra money on besides the fee for plugging your car.
Well, they have food
charge.
too. Didn't they buy M&M or what's the name of that company that has food? And so that, if they want to stop in there and buy food while they're charging.
They have frozen food.
frozen
Help us
food.
out here. The little stores. There's one in Red Deer.
Is it M&M something? Not M&M, that's not
It's up
quite right.
by
There's
Bauer
one.
Mall on the other side of the street. Stuff's frozen. Take it home, cook it. No
My wife,
virus.
you know the name,
Yeah.
there's a, up in the mall,
So
just up
they
here.
would have that, if they're charging their car, they have an opportunity to do several other things.
Is this an investment by Parkland or by yourselves?
Parkland
No,
is
no.
looking at it as we
We-
speak of what can you give people to do while they're getting their car charged.
when
And
we
it's the
left
right way to
Parkland,
think when you think about it, because if you can't sell gasoline, what are you gonna do with a bunch of gas stations?
when we retired from Parkland, of course, we were large shareholders. It's a public company, so we still had shares. And one thing we did for all our staff is when we first started, is we had a system where they could buy shares and we would pay half. The company would pay half and they could buy a share.
6% of your
You know,
wages.
say the share is selling at
Like a pension plan for your staff.
$20.
Didn't have a pension
So
plan, we had a share
that-
purchase
that
plan.
was the pension plan. And a whole lot of them, when they retired, they had all their share money.
We had a
could
little
sell
gal
or
work
they
for
could
us,
get
lived
it.
at Black Falls. She worked for us for 8 or 10 years. And when she retired, she had just about $500,000 in stock. Fern, what was her name?
I don't know, remember names, don't.
She was a single gal. And
Yeah.
She had a
But
mobile home.
it was a
trailer park
message.
in Black Falls.
Just out of the, because Alfio Truant was on our board, and of course he bought shares. Yeah, the board members were expected to buy shares, and he once told me, that's my retirement there. That's what he lived on, was the Parkland shares. You know, as he sold and as they raised, as they're, of course, the amount of value kept going up and up and up.
Well, I really wish I could have interviewed him as part of this.
We bought the
Program.
control block of shares from Don Moore in Toronto of Parkland Beef Industries. Now we're back in the feedlot business for 50 cents a share. They split 4 times and they're $33 today.
Yeah, but we went from being in Calgary, we went and got our
Well,
shares
we got
in
listed on
Toronto.
Toronto, of course, and still listed on the big exchange.
You have to do certain things in order to get listed, but we did.
So that by itself tells you why it's interesting to learn about and become a public company if you've got something valuable going for you.
What are the sales of gross sales now of Parkland?
It's what?
What are
are
the
the gross
shares?
sales, or no, not the share value, but just the gross sales? You said it was the 27th largest company in Canada.
I can't quote it. This was a chart that was put out in the Globe and Mail. And they had a list of top 50 companies or something in Canada, and I'm looking down here, and here's
It's in the,
Parkland,
it's in the
27.
billions, now.
Oh, yes, easily.
What a
They're
great
down
success
in the
story.
US.
I think of what's happened in Red Deer that others have become a part of, whether it's people or industry.
Well, Alfie
This is
Truett
one of the
obviously
best
bought
stories.
shares at 50 cents when we bought out Don Moore, and the
They were 45
company was
or
listed, and
50.
anybody could buy shares for 50 cents a share, or 60 cents, and $1, and $1.50, and it went up, and then the shares over the years got split 4 to 1.
Yeah, they split a few times, which means I know our shares, for instance, that we bought were just a few cents worth.
Do we need to be moving on here?
I think I was going to,
Yeah.
ask you to.
Well,
I
can
wanted
we
to talk a bit about-
do clubs instead of,
Where do we cover? We got Tough Sigmund, other investors.
We finished.
Parkland Properties is our own company that over the years has bought properties, owns this property, owns Riverside Office Plaza, owns CKGY.
This is
and
separate
just
from
bought
Park-
properties over the years, paid for them, and rents out space.
Yeah, and this is separate from Parkland.
Totally
Industry.
separate. Private company, not listed, not nothing. It's just a company. Okay?
Okay.
Dear Mark,
Is there
Mark,
anything more you want to say about Parkland Properties? Is it just like based in Red Deer, or?
yes, head office is right here. You're sitting in the head office. And son John and daughter Kathy are shareholders in it as well. So it's an effort to gradually bring in the next generation and helps sort out our estate when the time comes.
Is it just a property company, or is it expanded
Just a real
beyond that?
estate company.
well, it's income and properties.
Rental properties.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Next thing I thought I would ask about is Deermart and relationship.
Deermart
with
was
yourself.
the purchase of the John Deere dealership in Red Deer and the site that it's on, you know where it is, up on 67th Street, by Peter Lacey, our son-in-law, and John.
They bought the company.
And yes, we helped them with some
But you
cash in
bought
the early
Brand?
days.
Peter Lacey
Yeah,
and...
did you bought Brand?
No, we'll get
No,
to
no.
Brant in a
Yeah.
minute.
We get to
Okay.
Brant. No, Parkland.
It was Deermart Farm
Deermart.
Equipment and operated for 15 years up on 67th Street.
Correct.
Over a period of time, Peter was president of the company and John was vice president of marketing. John got very tired of, the idea was to acquire other John Deere dealerships in Western Canada. So that kind of got split up because John found himself away from home, living in some crappy hotel, calling on some John Deere dealer in Whitewater, Saskatchewan. And really got tired of the life on the road, going to all these little places and
Right.
So he bought
trying to buy John Deere
Deermart here.
dealerships.
and Red Deer.
So they kind of split up, and
No, he bought,
the John Deere dealership was owned by Service, Cervus, if you remember that.
Correct.
And John had bought from Service the John Deere dealership in Red Deer, and Peter's public company, Service was a public company, and Peter was chairman of it. They, in turn, had about, Jones, 5 or 6 dealerships across Western Canada, John Deere dealership. Oh, they had dealerships in Australia, too. They had a couple of dealerships in Australia.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I said, too.
and Peter has sold that to Brant.
Now, all that got sold to Brant. the
All of Service got sold to Brand.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, and including the Red Deer dealership, and Brant moved it out on the highway out here. So now Parkland Properties, the old Deermart Farm Equipment Sales Limited had the land building on 67th Street,
Right.
which they leased to the people that make these big vacuum trucks all over North America. And so that's leased out. It's just a leased property now. Okay?
just
John sold the company to Service,
right.
Peter and Service. And,
Peter, of
but
course,
they
is
owned,
your
but
son-in-law.
he owned the buildings and the property
Yeah.
along, what is it, 76th Street? No,
Says 67th
67th Street.
Right.
And
Basically
so
sold the
then-
operating
Yeah,
company,
it's just a property we have and we rent them.
and you kept the property.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Now,
it's-
Brant,
Sorry, I just wanted to, Peter is your son-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
and he was running Service.
yes,
He was the president or something,
chairman.
and then built up Service by doing the same thing, buying more
John Deere stores.
John Deere
Yeah.
outlets. Yeah.
And
He had people working for him
sold
that did the
to, sold
road
to
work.
Brant. But we have a little story about Brant, that maybe we shouldn't
Okay,
go
well,
into that. We're-
let's start with Brant and go back the days of, early days of Parkland. We decided we wanted to expand Parkland. We didn't want to be in the packing and feedlot business. So we looked around and we said, what can we tack into this Parkland thing? So we thought about agricultural manufacturing. And it would fit, instead of feeding cattle, it's agriculture, it's something we can forecast. So we got looking at it, and I had a fellow that I knew that came out of the Noble cultivator business in Nobleford, Alberta, down by Lethbridge. I got talking to him one day, and he said, you should go over to Regina and talk to a guy by the name of Gavin Semple. He said, he's got some problems, and maybe it's something there for you. So we took our
He was the
motorhome.
owner of Brant.
And that's in Regina.
Yes. So we took our motorhome, went over and stayed in Jones Brothers' driveway. And did our social thing, and I went down and had coffee with Gavin Semple, who was the president of Brandt. Brandt at that time built grain augers and cultivators in a plant in Regina, only manufacturing. We had a good discussion, and it turned out that Brandt was the major shareholder with a lawyer in Saskatchewan who had taken the money out of Brandt and owned a bunch of hotels. In 1981, when the National Energy Program quit, the oil industry died in Saskatchewan. So all these country hotels that used to have busy beer parlors and restaurants and the rooms full every night with 2 or 3 drilling crews who were in town had nothing. So he went broke, bankrupt, and the Toronto Dominion Bank took his control block of shares, 51% of the shares of Brandt, and the Toronto Dominion Bank wanted to sell them. So off to the Toronto Dominion Bank I went the next day. So we made a deal to buy control of Brandt with Gavin Semple. He bought 2 shares, and he was 51%, and we were 49%, and he was to run it and make some money with it. And we were together with Brandt for years and years and years. We owned half of Brandt, 49% of Brandt. Brandt, in the meantime, became the John Deere dealer, industrial John Deere dealer. There's a difference between agricultural equipment and industrial equipment in the John Deere empire. They're 2 separate streams. Brandt got into the industrial side, pretty well left agriculture alone, and today is the largest John Deere dealer in the world. In the world. It's a private company owned by the Semple family in Regina.
Sold. They wanted their family. It's a family business. It's not a public company. It's just a family business. And their son was growing up, and they have
Sean Semple
2
grew up,
grandkids that want to be
now
involved.
his boys are growing up.
So we sold our 49% to them, to Brandt, and then they now have complete ownership.
Gavin and Sean came over one day and sitting right around this table, and we made a deal to sell to them. And so they have 100% of Brandt, the largest John Deere dealer in the world in terms of dollar sales, and it's very well run. So Brandt picked up the John Deere dealership in agricultural dealership in Red Deer and moved it out to the highway.
Well, it wasn't their doing because it was already started.
It was a service. Service moved it out to the highway before they bought out Service.
So Brandt bought out Service then? Yes, I'd heard it had been sold, but I didn't know to whom.
Yeah, Brandt.
So that's why you've got the Brandt brand on that building out on the highway.
Right.
Now, they don't even have a John Deere sign there right now. I don't know if you noticed that. I know I have.
Very noticed that, yeah.
And I wonder why, and nobody's been able to answer my question.
No, we better move on. What the heck do you want to hear?
Anyway,
next?
Okay.
Brandt is a huge company. It makes excellent money. They are in the truck sales and trucking equipment business, doing all kinds of magical things. They have a railway service business as well. They build rail maintenance equipment for the railway companies. They got a big manufacturing plant in North Regina. Very, very big company.
You might have to bring
Moving
Okay.
along.
in dinner here.
I don't know if you want to say anything about Park Broadcasting or.
Deer Mark,
Worth it.
we talked about. Brandt,
We can
talked
make
about.
Park
Country Broadcasting was back in,
Just make it short.
okay,
Make it
well,
short. We moved to
when we
Red
were
Deer.
running the service
What
station,
let me do. We moved to Red Deer, and there was only one radio station. And we bought some advertising,
Called CKRD.
and I would time it. And we were shortchanged every time. We'd get it, in a minute or a half a minute or whatever you get. And I would time it, and they were always short.
well, 30-second spots, you bought 30-second spots, you're in the radio business, you know what
Yeah,
I'm talking about.
but they
60 seconds.
It was always short, so we said, what's going on here? Why don't you give us our full time? Well, they had us over a barrel because it was the only one, and so Jack says, this needs a new radio station
Need
in this
competition.
city. So he went and got, come on, help me. He just passed away.
Rod Stephen.
Rod Stephen.
You remember Rod?
And they talked in the little corner coffee shop. We used to call it the little coffee shop.
Across from the old bus depot.
You made all your deals
Remember,
on
next to McCleven's Welding.
made all your deals on the napkin, and
Correct.
decided to get your own service, yet another radio station. So there was a competitor.
Is that the station that moved kitty corner from City Hall?
No.
No.
Oh, yes, that's where their office was. It's called Park Country Broadcasting
Yeah.
Limited. And,
Dad owned,
okay, well, that started in that coffee shop by the bus depot with Rod Stephen and Jack Donald saying, Rod was an announcer at the station. It was the grand opening on our Texaco service station in Edmonton years before. And it turned up he was selling Fuller Brush products at that particular time. He was between jobs, and so we got together and said, let's start a radio station. So we got an engineer to do an engineering study, and we put this all together. We're all ready to go to the CRTC to get a permit, and a doggone engineer had a heart attack and died. So now we had to do it all over again because his technical proposal was non-event. So that took another year, but finally got a license and opened CKGY down across, how the heck would you put, kitty corner, sort of down the block on the other side of 48th Street. Yeah, 48th Avenue.
And then eventually Rob bought our share out, so that's it. You gotta
Yep.
shorten them up.
right,
Where you go to.
Other boards, rationale for accepting, Canadian Western Bank. When we first came to Red Deer, Fred Sparrow was the manager of the Treasury branch, just down half a block right across from Builders Hardware. And he was our bank manager. So he retired, first of all, he got promoted from Red Deer to head office and became the overall president of ATB, and then retired. And got together with some people in Edmonton and decided they wanted to start a bank called Canadian Western Bank. Oh, it was Bank of Alberta, sorry. The first one was Bank of Alberta. And so they were selling shares in this corporation, and they wanted to get a bank going. So Fred called us and said, do you want to buy some shares? And we said, well, what's the deal? Well, the shares were selling so much, and if you bought a certain package of shares, you got a seat on the board. So we said, what the heck? Well, we don't know much about banking, but here's a chance to learn, maybe make some money. So we bought a package of shares, and I went on the board of Canadian Western Bank. And after a year or two of that, and learning the bank, the board elected me chairman of the bank. So for 10 or 12 years, I was chairman of Canadian Western Bank. Now, for a mechanic and truck driver, that's not a bad job.
you can loan it out instead of paying it back.
Yeah, that's right. Canadian Western Bank is a Western Canadian success story. I have a piece of, I'll show you the numbers, but it's in a
I
frame
don't
around
see it
here
listed
somewhere.
here. What did you do?
But it is really a Western Canadian success story. And of course, it's very much still in business. Moving into Ontario, always did work in Ontario, BC, but Bank of Alberta bought Pacific Western Bank and changed its name to Canadian Western Bank by buying a bank in Vancouver and amalgamating that along with other things over the years. So Chairman Emeritus of Canadian Western Bank. Interesting story.
It's not one of the majors yet, but it's certainly heading in that direction.
Yeah, well, it's a banking's, you want to put it very simply, it's like running a money rental store. You know, like you go and you rent a boat or you rent a bicycle, well, you rent money in banks. And they take it in at one rate from people and they rent it out with their guarantee on it to other people. And you live on that spread, 2.5%. It's quite good. That's banking in my mind.
Are there any other corporations?
Other boards, Canadian Western Bank, Ensign. Along the way, Parkland decided to be an integrated oil company, and we bought 4 drilling rigs and 15 service rigs. and found that that really wasn't the business we wanted to be in. Our board decided we were going to get out of that, so we sold our rigs to what became Ensign Resource Service Group out of Calgary, run by a guy by the name of Murray Edwards, who I'm sure you've heard in the paper. Huge guy, married the former Premier of Alberta, lives on an island over in England. Very, very rich guy, one of the richest guys in Canada. Anyway, we sat on his board for a number of years in the drilling business.
Where are you getting all these? I don't see them here.
Okay.
He's adding them.
I think
Yeah,
he's
it's
adding
Ensign.
them. He's
I was
adding
on the board of Transelda. I was asked to sit on a advisory board to start with.
Oh, you're adding them all.
Sort of a one
True.
subject thing with Transelda, and then I got asked to sit on the Transelda board. So I had 10 or 12 years on that. Met some interesting people. Do we want more on Transelda?
No, that's fine.
okay.
Just
Community contribution, Optimus. Came to Red Deer, met Tom Chapman, who's the lawyer, allowed us to buy Paul Crawford Service Station. Tom said, why don't you come to an Optimus meeting? So we did. You joined Optimus.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to have ladies and men together.
sounds like Rotary.
Yeah, well, that's next.
Optimistic.
Anyway, when got elected to council met every Monday, or met Monday nights, and the Optimus Club met Monday nights. And so I was missing all kinds of meetings. And so Claiborne Hood, that ring a bell with you?
Very much so.
Claiborne said, why don't you join Rotary instead of Optimus? Because we meet at noon. I said, okay, let's do that. So that's how I became a Rotarian. Still, I'm a life member in the Optimus Club. I was presented that. I've got a board around here somewhere that says life member in the Optimus Club.
You were president of it too.
Yes.
And now you will even have man and wife as members.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
applied once, and they turned me down, so.
So that's when I became a Rotarian, and I won't tell you anything about the Rotary Club because you know more about it than I do.
And I was a director on the Alberta Energy Company, which became Encana for a number of years. That
Yeah.
was a lot of driving to Calgary and back and staying overnight and whatever.
Airplane rides to all kinds of places.
Airplane, we visited every
You went to
year.
Argentina
Every year
with them.
they wanted to have a board meeting outside of Canada. So what did we do? We did Argentina, we did, I can't remember
The
them.
Far
right now.
East, Bangkok or somewhere over there, because I remember sitting on an elephant.
4 different places, yes, we rode an elephant.
Somewhere with the elephants.
And, but I just haven't got a list of them. But it was wonderful trips.
One little thing under Rotary, you were involved in the establishment of that Rotary Career Opportunity Fund.
No, different deal altogether.
You sure?
Where have we got here? Oh,
it's
Alberta
on-
Opportunity Corporation is down here a ways. Let's
No.
finish community contributions.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Optimus Rotary Alderman, elected Alderman, served 3 years, led the polls the next election, got reelected, and built Riverside Office Plaza because we had money for the sale of our company. We wanted to invest it in Red Deer, so we built that service station on Missioner Hill and got into all kinds of trouble with, what the hell was it? Callahan, Bob Callahan. Do you remember him? He had a funeral home. Oh, you know him, I'm sure.
Come on, move on.
Anyway, got blasted, did not get reelected the second time, and so that was my session as alderman, elected.
It's very hard to be in business.
It's hard to be in business
And be
and-
on that board.
We had money we wanted to invest in Red Deer, and we
You
did.
took out a
and
whole
then it was,
page
oh,
in
well,
the
you
advocate
got
that said,
that
"Do not
zoned, and you
vote
got
for
that,
Jack
and
Donald."
you pointing fingers at people. Then we go to Alderman, Red Deer College Board. We both had sessions at Red Deer College on the board, right?
Well, we're both on the board.
You got more stories to tell on that because you canceled a bunch of courses and people. You had to leave the back door.
Well, it was one time when the government money cut cut back on what they were giving, and you take a look at the classes that don't have very few entered, they're a class of 5 people. And so you eliminate, when you have to eliminate, you eliminate the ones, and I think it was the musical ones or something that we eliminated, and I was on the board, and out front was a whole group of people protesting us.
Lynch mob.
So we went out to the back door to go home after the meeting, but that they don't understand that if you're cut down and you've got to cut something in your place, you would go to the ones that are going to affect the least amount of people, and that was the story there.
Common sense, but it still means you have to cut back.
We had a lot to do with come on, my mind's crazy. What are we talking about here?
The music
College
courses
board.
at RDC.
College board. No, it's the college board, because we gave money. We donated $3 million, and then had the Donald School of Business downtown, which now is back in the Polytechnic, and then we did another $3 million to support the health and wellness center that's in the college. And so we did those 2 things.
Was that separate from the library?
Yes.
Library, I was on
involved in the
the campaign team to raise $7.1 million for the library information commons, they call it. And the library was originally right in the middle of that first building that was the college. They've since built on several places, and so to make room for more, more rooms for offices or even for students, we built the college, the information commons out as a new building. And it's beautiful, beautiful building. So we raised the $7.1 million for that.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to talk at all, Jack, about some of the government?
Okay, let's move down to the government contributions. There's 3 tax review boards. The first one was, who the heck was minister? Was an overview of provincial taxes generally. Was a member of that committee.
I don't think I have.
It lasted a couple of years, and we were asked to come back by another, I forget the minister's names now, but, and we did a business tax review committee and made recommendations. The third one was personal tax review, and we also made some recommendations. That was for the guy who was Mr. No and was the minister.
But you had another, you just were a co-chairman or whatever.
Yes.
Because there were 2 of you
on the
one.
last
Yeah.
2. I was co-chair. First one I was chairman, and the last 2 I was co-chair, along with a lawyer from Edmonton. Interesting. I found out a lot about how government works and how government thinks. Because in their view, taxes are wonderful. That's how they get paid every month. Taxes to the average guy in the street is something they have to pay to keep all those dud heads
Away from the
going
door.
in Edmonton. So it's really a thing like this, and you're trying to make it so it goes like this and everybody wins. And so it was an interesting exercise. It really was. And a lot of our recommendations were taken into consideration and became law. So,
That too is unusual.
yes, it is. What's the name of that guy in Calgary that was the Minister of Finance, the first couple?
I don't know.
Oh, Jesus.
I know him too.
I know.
I'd know him if I saw him.
I
But
can't come up with a name.
we have met so many people in our life.
Good guy. Anyway, 3 tax reviews. Alberta Opportunity Corporation was started back in the days, and had a fellow from the Royal Bank was the chairman of it. I got asked to sit on the committee. Did that for a couple of years. He quit, and I became chairman. The Alberta Opportunity Company was particularly involved in small town lending situations, and if you wanted to sum it up, it was a lender of last resort. So if you had the Chevrolet dealership in Chauvin, Alberta, and you wanted to pass it on to your son, but you needed the money out of the building and the car lot, you couldn't raise it from the Royal Bank because they didn't even know where Chauvin was, and furthermore, they didn't want to know. So it was situations like that where the dealership was viable, it made money, so AOC would get involved with it, finance it, and take a first charge on it, and it was particularly valuable for small centers.
Yeah, they did little like hairdressers wanted to start a business, and then they couldn't get the money from the bank, so then they could
If you had a general store in some small center, and you'd been there, your father had it, and you had it, and you wanted to pass it on to your son, or you wanted to sell it to a third party, how do you get a mortgage on a general store on a main street of a town of 400 people? Because banks don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, because if you don't run a good store, it becomes not viable. And then who do you sell it to? You got a non-viable business in a little place and everybody knows it's non-viable, you can't sell it, you can't give it away. So that's where AOC stepped in. Or if you wanted to start an approach to government, you wanted to start a business, you had an idea for a business, AOC would back it and tried our best to get it into a smaller center, because we would take first charge on the property. If you wanted to start a mobile concrete business, that just jumped into my mind. We would help finance the towers and the storage for the cement and the mixing plant. And if you were in Black Falls, and that's just a small place, I'm using that name, Clive, Alberta, you want to start a concrete business in Clive, AOC would finance it for you if you knew what you were doing and if you had some equity. We tried to come up with not banking rules, but rules that we followed, or guidelines that we followed in lending. We didn't do stupid stuff that had no chance of. But a concrete business, because you could haul concrete all the way to Stettler. You could haul it all the way to Red Deer if you had a job down here. So if your gravel deposit in Clive was at the right price, you could export concrete 100 miles around. So we did things like that. I had, I think, 12 years with AOC. And it became part of Alberta agriculture and got farmed into that. This after I left, I retired. Up in Lacombe, there's a agricultural board of something or other, and it got welded into that, and it died. They did agricultural lending, but they got pretty well out of the commercial stuff. It involved going to some of the places we had loans, hosting probably 2 luncheons a year with clients from the surrounding area. If we had a bunch of stuff out by Stettler, we'd put on a luncheon in Stettler, invite our clients in, meet the board, listen to the stories, who's making money, who's having trouble, who didn't come because they're broke. There's a few of those. But it was an interesting way to get into the real guts of small business lending in Alberta. It really was.
A need filled at the time. You know, a need at the time.
Yep.
And it's interesting, Alberta's always been sensitive to that, because that's roughly how the ATB started during the 30s, when big banks wouldn't loan.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And that view still prevailed in the 70s and 80s when AOC was going. We don't want to lend in these small towns, because what's the property worth? There hasn't been a sale of commercial property for 7 years. Everybody goes on Main Street, stores and a beauty salon and a couple of doctors, a dentist, and everybody owned their own buildings, so there was no way you could check what rents were, because everybody owned their own place, a hardware store and a grocery store. Down at the end of the street was a car dealer, and he wanted to quit and sell the building to his son, but it needed financing. And the banks didn't like it. They wouldn't do it, even if it was a viable car dealership. Anyway, that was AOC in a nutshell.
Okay.
Philanthropic contributions.
No,
Focus, why, where? Why don't you start that one off?
I already jumped ahead with RDC
That's fine.
and the library, which we raised money for. And
I would like to
the School of Business is
listen
still.
to the focus or the concept or the philosophy you had in what you chose to give a contribution or a donation to. And you're right, we started with the Red Deer College, but was that the primary initial interest
Well,
in?
The library was the one that I got asked to be. Actually, I was the honorary chair, but nobody ever told me what honorary meant.
chair.
Because I worked
Do
as
it
hard
all.
as everybody else. I worked harder than everybody else. So that was the first one. Was the library, the library, getting that library built. So that was.
We put
one.
$3 million into that, I think, didn't we?
No,
Right.
no.
No.
We didn't do library. We donated personally, but we also donated with our company to raise the 7.1 million, which we raised, and that eased up a whole bunch of space in their regular place where they had classes and stuff. So they reworked that as well. So that was my first. No, that wasn't my first time because I raised money for the MRI at the hospital before that, and then started Festival of Trees. You haven't got that in here, which was very successful.
What did you raise? What total did you raise over the years
Of all the money,
of that Festival of Trees?
well, when I retired in 2018. No, that's what. Just a minute.
2018?
2018.
I
yes.
thought it was
2018, because there was
That's
one
4
more,
years ago.
one
Yeah,
more
that's
they had
beautiful.
on their own without Kathy and I, and that one wasn't very successful, and then they got into the pandemic. So 2018, and I'd worked there for 25 years. It was our 25th anniversary for the festival, and we had made 16 million for the hospital.
hospital equipment. They did a wonderful job.
And it's funny because when I had my leg amputated and then I had to go for second surgery, and I'm laying there ready, to get at it. And he says, oh, just a minute, I got to stop here, because he says, I want to tell you how thankful we are for all these screens in this operating room. We're bought by Festival of Trees. That's right. So that's how I started my surgery. But it was really hard because they'd come up with a list of the definite things they needed, and we would discuss it and sort of pick the one that we're going to represent for that year, and try and get as much as we could to pay off what they needed. But there was a lot of needs, but we had to judge which one was the most important and then go after it. So Festival of Trees was a very successful event.
It really was. I remember when it started, there were people saying, "Hey, will this be successful?" And it's gone on to, at least for the size of the community.
Well, you were very involved.
I was on the board of the Red Deer Regional Hospital Foundation, and they wanted us to come back in with ideas of how we could raise some money for the hospital. And so I'd heard about the Festival of Trees in Edmonton, and that it was they'd gone for 2 or 3 years before we got there. So I said to Kathy and all the grandkids and the kids, and we all went to Festival of Trees in Edmonton to see how they run it. And the festival of what? And came back and
Christmas
and we were
trees.
going to raise it, and they'd say, the festival of what? Why are you celebrating trees in November? Anyway, we got it going, and it was very, very successful. So we could say we could hold 1,000 people in the room for the dinner, and we had people waiting because they couldn't get tickets. If somebody turned their tickets in or something, we could accommodate them, but it was a very successful thing. So what else do we have here? I did a lot of things for the hospice, for the.
Anything else you want
got
to
here.
say?
Yeah, you did,
about
you
the-
raised a lot of money for that MRI machine. And that was,
Oh, yes.
That was the first
When I
one.
first came on the board, they didn't have an MRI machine in Red Deer. We had to go wait, and you waited in line to go to Calgary or Edmonton. And so I thought, we really need one in Red Deer. So we went ahead and we raised the money. I forget what it was. It was
2 or 3 million
4
bucks.
million, and raised the money and
Then
got
you had to
got
take
our
it in the
MRI.
window.
But listen, I did one thing. I got the MRI, but they have to get staff, which a lot of the staff went and took the training on their own, and they had to take a window out to get it in, and they needed a room to put it. So I didn't worry about all that stuff when I started. I said, just get this thing, this machine. So anyway, that's how we got the first MRI in Red Deer.
And was that separate from the Festival of Trees?
Yes, the MRI was before,
first.
and then I had that done before we started Festival of Trees.
Jack, would you like to say anything more about the Donald School of Business?
Well, we were invited to take a look at the Donald School of Business, and when they were starting downtown, remember they opened a branch of Red Deer College downtown. And this was to be the School of Business, and would we be interested? So we contributed $3 million toward that at that time. And they, of course, got the Donald School of Business going, and it's still going.
It's going
It's now
within
up
the
at the
college,
college.
though, now. It's the Donald School of Business, something in technology now.
Yes.
Has it been moved back to the
Yeah,
college?
back to the college, yeah.
Okay.
So that sign on that building downtown is, all it is decoration.
No, it's not. They have the continuing education people in there, just not the Donald School of Business.
But the
they
sign
still
says
use
Donald School of
they
Business.
still
Sure.
use the building.
Anyway, so moving along here, Red Deer College,
Westerner
$3
you
million.
got here.
Library of Health and Wellness, Joan was involved in. School of Business, $3 million. We
Where are
found
you? I'm going to do the Westerner.
Westerner for $3 million. Do you want to cover that, Joan?
I will cover the Westerner period because we gave money to the when I came on as president. I was elected president of the Westerner. I was the second or third woman in 100 and some years to ever be president of the Westerner. And I remember, I have to tell you little funny things, because when we had the election, and yes, I got elected, and then the board elects their president, and they elected me as president, and we're sitting around just the board. And I said, well, I want to change one thing. Right now, I'll tell you what I want to change is we're going to guess a time for the meeting. We had meetings every second week or something. And you set a time, and I'm going to start that meeting. I'll give you 5 minutes extra to get there. Because I used to come to the meetings with the other president and sit there for a half an hour or so, because everybody would talk, and they're waiting for Joe to come, and they're waiting for this guy to come and that guy to come. And I just couldn't put up with that. So I did, and I held true to what I was saying, and it worked like a darn. So anyway, when I said that we were going to start and I'd give you 5 minutes, this one guy turned to Michael Daw, actually, and said, can she do that? He said, yes, she can do that. So
Good for you.
anyway, and then while I was there, they had this trailer, I don't know what it was, a double wide trailer or whatever.
Triple wide trailer.
No, it wasn't triple, it was
It
just
was.
double, but anyway, it leaked and when it rained and it was cold as heck, they all had to bring their own heaters under their desks, and they were all in one room. You know, and like your desk would be here and yours would be there, and so there was no privacy or meeting people that wanted to put on a show or something. And so I came home after one time I was at the Westerner, and I came home to Jack and I said, we're going to donate some money to start them getting a proper administration building. So we donated 1.5. million, and that started them to be able to build. So it goes along really good, and then all of a sudden here, just before the pandemic, they were in financial trouble. And there, you know, this thing is that I think the Westerner is the city is actually supposed to support the Westerner should they be in financial trouble. So they did. And then after that, we decided, or I decided, I don't know who decided, that we should raise some money for them to save the Westerner, because they were really, the city said once, well, we'll take it over and run it ourselves. Well, I thought that's going to be a great job. But anyway, they decided that they would try to hang in there. And so we had a campaign going, and we raised close to 8 million for them, just during that pandemic. And
This is very recently.
Yes.
yes, in a period time of maybe 3 months. And we actually got some
There's a little bit more to that story.
government help
The money was raised for the
for the foundation. We had to set up a foundation
with a
first of all.
foundation board separate from the Westerner Board of Directors.
So we set up a foundation, put good business people on it. They are separate from the board of the Westerner.
And that's for capital replacement, capital improvements
And
only, not for working capital.
Yeah, it's for if, you know, they need a new tractor or a new, like they need some new parts in the Centrium.
What's the relationship then now between the city and the Westerner? Because I think at their last annual meeting, there was a significant debt.
Where they got into
Efficiency.
financial trouble was
We lost-
the manager or the CEO of the Westerner got them into trouble by building that extra building, which is called the exhibition hall. And that exhibition hall was built, I don't know how you can say it,
Cost plus.
without control, cost plus. And they didn't have the money.
They didn't have the money.
When
They
we
didn't
were
worry
there,
about
Jack
the
and I were there, every time we built a building, we had the money first, and then we built the building. Well, he built the building thinking he was going to rent it to the soccer group or something, and
Soccer league.
that didn't turn out, so he didn't have any money, so he
$8
just
million
put them in the
they
hole
didn't
for
have.
millions. And so the Westerner now is paying a percentage of their profit from every year goes into paying off that debt.
Off the city, yeah.
Yeah.
With the, two things happened. COVID,
Right.
no fair, no parade, everything canceled for 2 years. And Westerner ended up $18 million, the whole, and that's what the city put in, because they are the guarantor for the Westerner. But on top of that, part of that $18 million was this building they didn't need, couldn't afford. It was going to be leased to the soccer club for winter soccer. And think about it, an $8 million building leased to the soccer club, and the dads and mums and dads of the soccer club maybe has 100 members.
But listen, they have
Heat
the-
this place.
They have the soccer club now, but it's on a
True.
different thing.
It's under one of those
Yeah.
screens.
But the
South of
manager
city.
told the board that he had this lease for X dollars a month for 5 years or whatever it was. He never had the lease signed.
But I said they do have a lease now with
Yeah,
the
well,
soccer.
that's fixed.
They are only in there from Monday till Thursday. And they put sod on the floor and the whole bit, Monday to Thursday, and then the weekends are for the Westerner, and everything that they have at the Westerner nearly happens on weekends.
They're doing their best to use it, to
Yeah.
make money with it.
Do you think
So
the Westerner's going to make it now then, given the new
I'm hoping
structuring?
so. I'm hoping so. I hope they can. It's depending on if they can still have events and if something else comes along.
It's such an important draw for Red Deer.
Well, it's going on 30 years. Let's think of what it costs to put a new roof on the Centrium. Think about what new rice plant's going to cost. Think about some of these big capital expenditures. That's what the purpose of this trust is to have cash on hand that you don't use for playing around sponsoring some country and western act that's going to come in and cost you $10,000 or $15,000 because you don't sell enough tickets.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You know, there's risks involved in that business, and they've had managers over the years who did not rate the risks properly.
But I worked for the Westerner as a volunteer for years and years and years. When they first moved to that site, I organized horse shows, and we always made money on them too. And I did that for 20 years, and then of course when I became president, I had too much to do, work and doing that, and so I didn't do horse shows anymore. But you know, we've always been, and then of course they had no governance. They had no. It used to drive me nuts when I was in there because there were no plans of how people can rotate in their company or on their committee. They'd have a person sitting on the committee for 10 years, you know, leading a committee. You gotta, you know, change up. So, you know, that was another thing that I went in for 3 years, and I was on the governance committee with Parkland, and then I did the governance committee at STARS. And so I decided I'll bring my stuff and we'll do the governance for the Westerner. You know, just the fact that what makes up our financial committee. Well, these people have been there for years, but you want a mix. You want maybe one from the board. You want people from the community. You want some, you know, people that have knowledge of finance. And they should be there, say, for 3 years, I think it was, and then, you know, they can move on. Or they can become members of the board because then they know a little bit about the Westerner. So this was a program to try and get everybody, all the committees, not just so that they don't have the same people all the time. Because, you know, if you rotate and bring in other good people, you get new ideas. So
true. You need succession plans. Somebody to succeed who's there. I've been on so many committees that have failed. Also building
the people on the board. How do you get, there's several things that are needed. They do food, and you know, they do all these different things. And you got to have somebody who knows something about these things on the board, otherwise.
Well.
So we would have a chart and which ones were weak and which ones were.
A number of
crack the whip.
Number of years. Over a period of a number of years, various people got involved and wanted to stay involved with the Westerner and the Westerner board, and really were not qualified. They weren't prepared to say no to some things, like building $8 million ventures when you don't have the money, and do the right things, get your staff trimmed down, use volunteers, all of the stuff that you need in an organization like that. So it got off the rails for a few years, and I think it's back on the rails now. Mm-hmm. It's hard-nosed decisions being made. It's like everything else. You have to be a tough old nut and not go whichever way the wind's blowing that day.
They have some good people on the board now, what I call good people. Some people that are knowledgeable about you know, food or all the other steps that they put on entertainment and all that stuff. So I think they've got some good people on the board that I hope they can contribute.
Okay, let's move on.
One, I guess, side question.
Administration building, we've said we've kicked in $1.5 million. It got built, it's beautiful, and it's very useful.
Yeah, it
What else can we say about it? Construction of the Centrium? That can be as long a story as you want to hear, but we'll try and summarize it very quickly to say that we needed to get out of the old arena downtown. We put together a management crew, Alvin Johnstone, myself, who else was on that? There was 2 or 3 of us. We went to the province and we got $7 million from the province. We got matching money from the city, and we raised $7 million, so we 20 some odd million bucks. Put together a construction management committee. We met every second Wednesday at noon. I've never eaten so much Kentucky Fried Chicken in my life because they were the big sponsor up there. So we used them for our luncheon for 2 years. We were the construction management committee, if you want. We made the decision. We hired a guy from a construction company in Edmonton to run the job. We ended up building the Centrium and Parkland Pavilion $1 million under budget, and used the extra $1 million to build that building out by the racetrack there.
Agri-Center.
The Agri-Center. If you wonder where something I call Mount Johnstone, you know the back of the log building. Come on. There's a
just directly,
big hill with an entertainment bowl.
Directly west of the
place for bands and singers
Centrium.
and stuff down. And
It's directly west of the Centrium. Is that west?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
west.
West of the Centrium.
North of the chalet. That's the word I was
Oh,
looking
yeah.
There's
for. There's a big hill in there.
Is that Harvest House or?
No, a hill.
the one
a
next
hill,
to it?
A hill.
No,
Grassed hill.
not Harvest Center.
Guess
no.
where that came from? When we dug the bowl for the Centrium, we took the dirt out, and instead of hauling it to the landfill with trucks, we cut about 2/3 of the cost off by using loaders and building an entertainment complex in there on the hill, a grassed hillside. So in the summer you can sit and listen to bands and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's where it is. I call it Mount Johnstone because Larry
Melbourne?
Johnstone was our manager. So a bunch of us said, well, let's call it Mount Johnstone. I'd never been officially named that, but that's what it's for. And we ended up with money left over. We were asked, the concourse around is where you go to your seats above and seats below.
Right.
$800,000 is tile that. We said, to hell with that, we can't afford it. So we painted it gray instead. There's another $800,000 saved just like that. And it's still gray and nobody even notices it, do they?
No, you're absolutely
It's the
right.
ability to say no to stuff and no, we're not going to do something stupid.
And work against a budget instead of cost plus. And work against the budget
Yeah, well, exactly.
instead of cost plus.
Yep, exactly. Well, cost plus is terrible because the more you spend, the more the contractor makes. So he wants, don't you want a doorway? How about an overhead door here so we can bring cars in? Oh, that'd be a great idea. He may just put $1,000, $1,500 in his pocket for that $20,000 overhead door they're going to put in that wall. If you're going to take cost plus stuff, you better be a damn good construction guy or have somebody on that says, no, we don't need that door. Go use this door over here.
So true.
So anyway, that's the Centrium.
Okay.
Okay,
health.
Stars is next.
Health.
Health.
Stars, hospice, cardiac, you're on.
Stars. I was asked to go on the board of Stars. Of course, that's meetings in Calgary again. The doctor who started Stars, he
Greg
was,
Powell.
yeah, and he.
I hired him.
Yeah, he had a lady come in who had just given birth and died, and he felt has to be some way to get people to the hospital quicker. And so he started Stars, and they had leased 2 helicopters. So when I get on the board, the first thing they want to do is raise some money. Raise some money to
buy the helicopter.
Buy the 2 helicopters was going to be a difference of $800,000 on our budget. We wouldn't have to lease them. So we bought the 2 helicopters. And I was on the board for, 8 years. 2 sessions anyway.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years, I think you.
And, we had another time we raised money
They
for
wanted to
two more not used, brand new helicopters that would
bigger
carry
capacity, longer range.
longer flying areas but big and more people. They could take 2 patients
More
instead
money.
of the one.
My
But-
son is in training to go on those flights as an ER physician, as they try and extend the hospital and do more workups, particularly for the cardiac and
That
stroke
last one,
patients.
we raised 25 million in Alberta. In Alberta, that was all of Alberta. They were in Calgary and Edmonton, and Red Deer did very well.
Well done. Okay.
Okay, that's STARS. Hospice, they had worked 7 years to raise enough money to build the hospice. And when they built, they were short. They had to take out a mortgage for $800,000. And they came to me, that must have been just sort of after the time I retired, because I must have had a little more time, and said, would you please help us, because we can't afford to pay for the mortgage as well as our operating, and we're in trouble. So we went to work and raised, in just a few months, I got a crew together, we raised 1.2 million. And that was enough to pay off their 800,000, plus have a little bit of extra for rainy day money. So that's the hospice. The hospice is a wonderful place in Red Deer.
It's one of the finest examples of palliative care in the province.
For a long time, they weren't getting much from the government, because if they'd been in the hospital, if it'd been part of the hospital, they would have, financed it. But it wasn't in the hospital because it's a standalone building. They were being shunned a little bit from the government, but they actually, Jim McPherson went to bat and actually got some money out of the government to help finance. But they do a lot of fundraising and items they have on, walking or planting trees or whatever. And so they make their money that way. But it is I've heard people just admire that place. It's so different than being shoved into that area at the end of the hospital there, and everybody just has to wait to die. Whereas here, you're still a person, and they still look after you right to the end, and it's very, very good. Okay, cardiac catheterization. Now, what is that?
SPCA. Next line down.
Oh, I'm doing this one.
Oh,
You got to read across.
well, we don't have
We tried we offered to give them, I don't know how much money. Was it 5 million? And Sarah Hoffman
was the
was
Minister
the
of Health.
Minister of Health. And they used to be, Red Deer was something like about third on the list to get a new hospital or an addition to the hospital. And when Sarah Hoffman and the NDP came in, they got wiped off. So we met, actually we were in San Diego, but Sarah Hoffman and the board chair of the Hospice Foundation phoned us and we talked to her. And we had offered $5 million to get them started, and if
Raised $5 million locally.
if Alberta would
Yes, I remember
come
that.
in with that to get a cath lab, and she said, no, I wouldn't do that. So that was the end of that.
She told me that she was the Minister of Health, and she would decide when we were going to get catheterization, and it didn't matter how much money we raised, the government would decide, and she was the government, and she was not going to have catheterization in Calgary or in Red Deer.
See, the problem
Period.
is they
Full
come
stop.
in,
Is there anything you don't understand?
they've had a heart attack, and so they either have to be taken to Edmonton or Calgary. And, not just like, what's our mayor's name?
Ken Johnson.
Ken Johnson's wife. for instance.
She
And
died.
she didn't die then, but she had problems. And she would have been one that probably, had they had the cath lab there where they can put a stent in or something if someone's having trouble, which they can't do. And so by the time they get them they do use stars quite a bit, I think, to get some of them to Calgary, Edmonton, but I think Calgary and Edmonton want to do their own people first. The rules.
Well,
The Calgary and Edmonton doctors were told, did not support having a cath lab in Red Deer.
there's some challenges to it.
Yes.
Patient volume, and have you got 24-hour coverage, 7 days a week?
Even 12 hours coverage is better than none at all.
Very true, very true. I can remember that argument coming up when I was taking my MBA in London, Ontario, back in the 60s. And the comment was, we've got such a fabulously low mortality rate in our university hospital. I said, but that's not the issue. The issue is how far away from it are you, because unless you get the patient there,
That's right.
they can't survive.
Well, there's a golden hour. STARS always talks about the golden hour. Like when you have a heart attack, there's the golden hour to get something done that you wouldn't have any problem.
Well, you had the notes
So true.
of how many people in
Yeah.
the past year had passed away because of the not having to
Oh,
buy
John, our
ambulance.
son
If you're in a
John.
combine at Bentley and you have a heart attack, you get your wife, she gets you into Red Deer, they give you a shot and take you by ambulance, but it's 3 or 4 hours by the time you get to Calgary. And then you may have to wait in line because they're busy. And people were actually dying because of the lack of this. But she was
They still are.
rude.
They still are. I'm just,
Totally rude. Didn't
just,
want anything to do with it.
just to get that done. But she was not at all supportive. And so,
No, what?
what do you get?
Okay, move along.
And now there's a $1.8 billion expansion
Oh,
coming.
God, help me.
It's overdue with 14-hour wait times and
Don't
emerged
hold your
last
breath.
night.
And are we going to get that if we have the right government?
Who's
We
going to
might,
get elected?
But what
That's what
happens?
you want to ask yourself.
It's all about the government, because it's just the same as when you were raising money for the Centrium, and the government changed. Then you go right back to the beginning again to negotiate with a new bunch.
Yeah.
It just doesn't
Anyway,
work.
let's move
Anyway,
along.
we're working on
Okay.
that still. And
SPCA,
SPCA, dogs and cats. So they came to me, they had to have an $800,000 mortgage too. And actually, I was kind of on that board helping because, your buddy, come on.
Dave Will.
Dave Will had gone to the hospital because he fell off something at the golf club, and he was out of commission. So what he was kind of overseeing the construction. So anyway, I got asked to come on there, and they, they put in things in many ways that I thought could have been done later, but it was at the point where it was nearly finished. And they didn't have, I always said to them, you've got to put out a budget that what's going to cost you to go to the new place versus the old. That the old was two sort of
Double-wide
shacks
trailer.
put together, and it was
They bought
awful
used from
cold,
somebody.
and it was terrible. And they needed the new place. But anyway, they were $800 short when they got this place built.
$800,000 short.
Which?
$800,000
short, yes. And so we went to work and tried to get a group together, but it was when they were doing the Ronald McDonald House, and that place just kind of, they had campaigners from Calgary getting people to donate to that, so we couldn't get it all, so I think we had, about 8,000 more to get, and so Dave Will and Jack and I pitched in and got them paid up. So that's the best we can do with the hospital, with the SPCA. That was a hard one to work. The best one to raise money is STARS, people know stars and they will give
really
money.
do.
The hospice was pretty good once I explained
Way.
what the hospice was, because they didn't know what a hospice was.
United Way.
United Way, okay, United Way. What did we do with United Way?
We support it every year.
Yeah, we support it every year.
That's about the end of that.
Well, once I told,
Junior achievement.
I told them that if you put up, say, $10,000, you say that to this guy, if you give me money, it will be doubled by this money. So
Matching fund.
matched.
Mhm.
So that sometimes raises more money. So that's what they do with our money, to put it up for matching
Basis
money.
that someone's
So
gonna
that
match.
somebody gives some
That
money,
usually
and
helps.
you match it, Now, what's the next?
Junior
That's,
achievement.
that's the Bill Gates formula with Rotary.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
junior achievement? That's your baby.
Okay. Junior achievement in Alberta, you're familiar with what it is?
Yes.
Program with high school
My
students,
sister-in-law
getting them
was on it.
used to principles of business and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. We've supported it for a number of years, to the tune of 10 or 20,000 bucks a year sort of thing. And I'm on the, what is it called? Some kind of an honorary committee for junior achievement anyway.
Well, junior achievement runs the Alberta.
And so they would like to expand in central Alberta. They've had very, very good luck with students wanting to get into junior achievement, from about 300 kids in central Alberta 3 or 4 years ago to where they're now looking at 7,000 high school students in central Alberta who want junior achievement. That's what they're looking at this year. So that's going to cost $600,000 over 3 years, because they have to hire a new coordinator who gets people to speak at the meetings and get the meetings organized and a place to have them. They need another person in central Alberta, and I don't have the paper with it. So we're looking at taking half of that ourselves and getting Rotary, Red Deer Rotary Club. Now, I don't know whether you're aware of this or not. I talked to Darcy McIntyre, who concurs that we were looking for something for our 100th anniversary project. You know that, because you hear about it every meeting.
True.
What about doing junior achievement for the next 3 years? Getting all the other Rotary clubs in central Alberta, and I don't know where they are, but we know where some of them are, to come and support this as well and assist in not only the financial support, but presenting the programs in their community and making this a centennial project. What better way to get 16, 17, 18-year-old kids knowledgeable about Rotary? This cuts both ways. And the good that Rotary does in their community of Rocky or Eckville or wherever there's a Rotary club. Getting kids interested in Rotary, and Rotary interested in training kids in business methods and styles for the future. It fits just like that.
It fits with their
Aim
youth focus
of Rotary.
and with the original Rotary concept of teaching business
Exactly.
methods.
So I got this thing from Junior Achievement. I got hold of Darcy, had a meeting with him. He's supposed to be going to present it to our club and get some way to raise $600,000 over 3 years, or $200,000 a year in central Alberta. But thinking what it does for Rotary, what it does for kids, and a centennial project for
These young people, you
So,
would be amazed.
that's where it's at right now.
amazed that they get up there and speak, and just they're so good. They're 15 years old, and they get up there and speak.
They get their teeth in it.
And they
got it.
build companies. I said to this one guy that was sitting beside me at a luncheon this year, what kind of a business did you run because each one gets a group and does a business.
They have
He said,
little
we said,
businesses, they
we
start
sold
up.
cosmetics, he said. I must have been some girls in that one. He said, well, we came out about even, so he didn't make money, I guess. But, you know, they get all this information and the ones that I've heard speak at a huge event are just tremendous. You know, I mean, they speak like this is just another job to do.
So this is a project that covers Central Alberta, or could cover Central Alberta. It does good with kids, and I think the Rotary clubs will benefit by sponsoring it.
They
for
work
3
out of
years.
what's the building that they work out of in Red Deer here?
Well, this curling rink is where we meet.
No, not the curling rink, where the junior achievers work out of. Is that,
I don't know.
well, it's the one, come on, you say they don't do enough for Red Deer and they should be out there, they're partners in the event that the Westerner has where they show all the machinery.
Oh, Agritrade,
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce,
We got
yay,
there
I could get through.
There we go.
They operate out of the Chamber of Commerce building,
office.
and they have all that stuff
It's a
in
good
there.
place
So,
for them to be
Yes,
based. And,
exactly.
yeah,
But, you know, it's got benefits for everybody involved there if it all comes together. Someone's got to get it organized. I'm not sure Darcy's the guy, but it's a start anyway.
well, you'll be looking for another centennial project.
We're looking for
The current one's getting stretched out of it. I'm on the grants committee, Jack.
Yeah, well, there you go.
See, it hasn't come to it yet.
No.
so where are we now here?
Don't
Okay,
be
we're child advocacy, I think, and I got a typo in there.
Yeah, Child Advocacy Center, well, we're just donors on that building. I went to, we both went to a small meeting. There weren't many people there, and that was good. That was really good. But the folks that they have putting this together, I have to admire. They're all good people, and I think that they have now had the, what do you call it, the dirt tank turning, or the
Sod turning, yeah.
When you see a crane, they're building a building.
at the college,
that's coming up.
and they're just at the back of
Back of
the
the-
college. And
the southwest corner
they're
of the
building it, and
Yeah.
I think there's a group there that have figured out a way they're gonna make it, and I hope they do. We'll help them in a certain way, just give them money, but I'm not on that committee or anything.
Okay, thanks, Joan. I listed some of the recognitions that both of you have received, and I wondered about how to go through it, but it struck me that
It's the Canadian Business of Excellence.
I think it has a few other
That's,
names to it. but-
Those are awards that we have received over the
Yes.
years and represented by, I think, by that glass torpedo right on that counter there. So why don't we go see what it says on it?
Yeah, I think, Jack, what I wanted to do was just list them, and then if there were any ones,
There'd be
particular
a
ones.
pile, there'd be a
you wanted
pile
to
more
comment
than
on.
that. There's a
Sorry,
pile.
that's
Yes,
Canadian
there are.
Petroleum Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you this thing of mine that they had, wherever I did with it. Now, here's this.
Oh,
And that lists a lot of what I gave and we gave together.
I listed them out, Jack, Jones, just to say if there's any you wanted to comment on, either the reasons for, or the recognition, or the
Well, I
pride
don't-
that-
Well, it's stuff we received over the years
I
from various
never,
people.
I never expected to receive the Order of Canada or the Alberta Order of Excellence. Those are my pins here. But when the Alberta Order of Excellence Lieutenant Governor phoned me on a Sunday, and you know how we get all these crazy calls, I just hang up. So she said, you've won, she started out to say you've won something, and I just hung up.
Sounds like a Nobel Prize story.
And so she calls back and introduces herself and tells me that I have won the I would be awarded the Alberta Order of Excellence. Jack got his,
Couple of years before.
no, more than a few years before. I always thought Alberta Order of Excellence was more about your business life, whereas the Order of Canada was more volunteering and doing things for your community and stuff that they
Joan
check.
certainly deserved that because she's done lots for her community.
Yeah. Business Administration Award at SAIT. That's yours, Jack. You did that.
Okay, anything else you want on those awards?
No, unless there's something you'd like to say about one or two of them, any of them. I think I'd want to add the comment about the Citizen of the Year Award, which is restarted by the Rotary Club, that every member of your
Well,
family
our whole family has won the
has
Citizen.
received that level of recognition.
Citizen.
Well, they've grown up in a family where we've talked about the things we're getting involved in and the things that we support financially for years. And I guess they've watched this unfold as they grew up, and they're involved in the community, and they're supporting the community, and they donate on their own to various causes, both Kathy and John. And so they were recognized over the years as Citizen of the Year.
So the whole
Quite
family
deserving.
have.
Not riding on our coattails either, but in their own right. John is chairman of the
Foundation at the Western.
foundation at the Westerner right now.
But he was on the board of the Health Foundation for years.
Kathy was very active in Festival of the Trees over the years. You know, they've earned their own way, and sure they're, but they've been interested and been exposed to being supportive of community ventures over the years at home.
But I think what it means to me is the opposite side of that the community is recognizing what
Yeah, that's right.
not just the two of you have done, but your whole family.
Do you plan to bring back the Citizen of the Year awards or not? Has there been anybody say any talk about it? Because the Rotary had always sponsored it.
I haven't heard any recent talk, but I'm sure that one won't be dropped. It's come up from the point of view of in the post-COVID era.
Yep.
What can you do, and do you want to change it? Because there's been a few changes in that program over the years, but the highlight to me has always been the Citizen of the Year.
Yeah.
That said, I've had the privilege of nominating several of them.
And then you can add the
There's just
Alberta.
so much appreciation by the individual and, the recognition that goes with it, whether it's,
Yeah, I won the Order of Canada, but I also have the Alberta Order of Excellence too.
Okay, let's go to page 2 here.
I'm already there and finished.
Okay, well, let's start at the top. Philosophy. Anyone can succeed as entrepreneurs. It takes ingenuity, leadership, time, and hard work. The answer to that is yes.
those are quotes from you.
I want
And are they still true?
Well, yes, they are.
I want to give you my quote.
The dumbest guy on the street gets to set the price, and the one thing every business needs is blank, 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 customers. So satisfy your customers. Be there when they want to buy something. Be open the hours they want to shop.
My quote is, you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to throw something back.
That's a good one.
That's a good pitch.
That's a good one.
That's a good pitch.
So that talks about the entrepreneur thing. Joan, additions. Secretary of Parkland Industries, horses and the handicap. Now, you haven't talked about your career in horses at all.
Oh, it's pretty long. and I
There's a
think
picture
we
of one
wanna
right
go,
back
don't
there.
we?
Anybody wants?
I
Festival Treat
organized the quarter
Awards.
horse shows.
I gotta
We had
excuse myself
We
for a minute.
had contestants coming from all over the U.S., and actually one was from Australia. And we had the best show going, and one day this one lady that I know came running with the American Quarter Horse magazine, and she said, look at, we are one of the 7 best horse shows in North America.
Wow. I
So-
had many friends come up for the show, and phone me because they're here and we want to have a chat, but they're so proud of what goes on here.
Yeah,
And how
that show.
important it is
then
to their family
I
and
had to
kids.
leave it when I got involved with the executive and being president. So I did it for 20 years, and we always made good money. I got sponsors and stuff, and so but that's what was in that magazine, and I took it around and showed every volunteer that had worked for me. This is what you guys helped me to do. Don't take it yourself. Give it to the workers. And I always say you can't thank volunteers more and too much ever. And I always say you should thank them 7 times in 7 different ways. And we try very hard to do that.
Well, when you're in, you're contributing voluntarily. It's so important to have recognition.
I want to give you some of the numbers of Festival of Trees. Like we put that on and we would have, and this is not, I'm not fibbing, 2,400 volunteers that worked on it. We would have 520 donors and sponsors. And we would have another 1,500 singers and dancers and things, entertainers that would volunteer their time to be at the Festival of Trees. It was the place to do. When I started, we had a special event for volunteers and donors, because that's the whole core of what you put on is going to be your volunteers and your donors. And we invited them before we opened the festival, the night before, they could come and have a beef on a bun or whatever we gave them. And I remember it was one of your relatives, that said to me, your brother, come on, give me his name. Toby.
Or Tom. Toby.
That said to me, because you guys were good supporters, and he said to me, this is the best event of the whole festival, is saying thank you to your donors and your supporters. So that's how we started.
Thank you. I know, it's a side story, but one of the reasons we used to go, aside from all the others, was because we could admire that clock, the stand-up clock. That was always, there in the corner as a kind of a quote advertising, because my father was originally a jeweler apprentice in England, and that's how he got into optometry, because in England they're a joint occupation, and that's how he became not only an optometrist, but met an optometrist, my mother.
But when you're doing an event like, that, you have to really, your volunteers and your sponsors, if you don't get them, you don't have an event. Those are the ones. And I remember you guys always came with Sadie. She came with you, and we had a table of 9 or something instead of 8 for you. And I always used to take her to lunch every summer. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
There were only 2 people that she would go to lunch with, and you were one.
Oh, good. I had a little Jeep then, not a Jeep, baby. Come on, Jack, what was my little car that was a convertible?
Little Benz.
Benz, yes, a Benz
Mercedes-Benz.
with the hood down, and there was a thing at the back so your hair didn't blow very much. And I took her for a ride in that, and we went all over and looked at things. And she was such a good person. So I learned some lessons from her too, how to be a good person. Anyway, read this thing, and it's really got. Well, I just put that I got the Alberta Order of Excellence in 2021. So,
Super.
but it's my story.
So you cover these things here?
Yes.
Joan Addition, Secretary of Parkland, yes.
Yeah.
Horses, did you get to the horses?
Yes.
Enough?
I just talked about how we built the quarter horse show to the point where we were
Yes.
one of the 7 best.
Festival of Trees, I think we covered earlier, did we?
Yep.
Yes.
Queen Elizabeth Award, that was that medal. Senate Canada, I don't know what
Well,
that
I
is.
have the Queen Elizabeth Gold, and then I have the Queen Elizabeth, what's the next one? Diamond. Diamond one,
Something like
too,
that.
yeah.
What's the Senate thing?
I don't know the Senate thing here.
What do
Senate,
you-
Part of a larger phrase, I just took it off the internet.
yeah.
Um,
Order of Canada, I got that, and then there's lots. but
Senate in Canada is for people who go to rust away.
I never do anything for the doggone awards or the things
Order of Canada.
people give you.
She's got Order of Canada.
I said, listen, I don't ever do things for the naming
Okay.
awards they give you. I do it because I think I make a difference in the city. And I think that I've helped in some places to make Red Deer a better place to live.
and
Any
it
other questions?
requires people who have that as a vision.
Yeah.
And,
So,
you know, the
and
city is
I've trained, at first, when I first started, I trained, I would go to, and I would have this group of people and say, who's gonna chair it? I'll work with you, but I'm not chairing it. No, I'm not chairing it. And I trained some people about how to chair it, and be darned if, when we went for that 7.1 million at the college, he chaired it. I don't forget his name, but anyway, and it was so good to see other people stepping up and say, yes, I'll chair that, and learning, how to make a group, how to keep a group going.
The Red Deer has some unique characteristics, and I say of Michael Daum, or to Michael, it's got to capture those stories as they occur, as they evolve.
We're cat.
Because Red Deer is so young,
Yeah.
but it also has vibrancy, enthusiasm, ideas, vision, and we'll certainly see it as time passes.
Well, one thing I did more for Festival of Trees, and I didn't cover that, is that I decided to, well, actually, it was, what's his name? God, names are just terrible for me. Anyway, he came to me and said we should have a lighting of a big tree downtown. Everybody has the lighting of the big tree, so we went to work on that, and we had the lighting of the
And you
big
had
tree.
a parade and
No, we started first with just the lighting of a big tree, and actually it was, we still had the, we still had somebody who did, he had come on, hurry up and help me.
you had somebody,
That they could make it so that the tree was down
a
there.
remote, so you had a dinner, and somebody said, now it's time to light
Radio
the
station,
tree, and you
radio
had a
station.
radio connection.
We still
with
had
the
a
guy
radio
that's pulling the
station in
tree.
Red Deer.
you can
And
advertise it.
he had it
Highlight
so
it.
that
Yes.
we were at the dinner at the Westerner, but it came over that we could count to have the tree lit, so.
10, 9, 8, 7,
Yeah.
6, 5.
So we did,
And
so
then the tree
the
lights up at the
reason,
right time.
the reason I was in favor of having the tree lighting and the parade and all the things we did, it grew big. And it was because it was free. Everything else we had at the Westerner, you had to buy or a ticket or you had to pay to get in. And this was free for everybody, and they came out in hordes. We had games and some popcorn and, drinks, hot chocolate and stuff for them, and they really enjoyed it. But it was because we were catering to all walks of life.
Well, and I recall that even if the temperature was way down, you still got
Oh.
a good
Yeah.
crowd.
Oh, and we'd have
Just have another sweater on. that's all.
Yeah. So,
We're Red Deerians, we know what cold weather's all about.
well, this has been a delight, Jack, Joan, to just
Thank
chat
you,
and
thank you. I
fill
hope
in
we
so many
got enough
blanks
in
about
here
how
to.
things have happened in Red Deer. And, you've started so much, been involved in so much. It's not just financial contributions, it's
Yeah.
organizing and
So
stimulating
she
and
put her
contributing.
shoulder to the wheel on so many things.
Yes,
And
yes.
got things started.
You
got them
know, you
organized.
can't, like, some of these things, like the dog and SPCA, we looked at them and said, you know what, you've got about 20 cats here and you got this, and Jack says, you know, just, why don't you pick the best out of them and then get rid of the rest? Oh, no, 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 no.
That's a good business
No,
approach.
you can't do that. I can't do that.
Are we done?
This
Of the
was your
fittest.
attitude.
Are we done?
Get rid of some of
I
it.
just wanted to say that I'm so delighted to hear that your story will be put together in more detail and more authoritatively in the book that you're working to
Yeah.
publish shortly with
Well,
Michael
I hope
Donald.
we didn't talk your ear off here.
Well, I just hope this becomes an introduction to to that story, and I'm just delighted that you shared it with us today. So, thank you ever so much, both of you.
Well, thank you
And I
for
guess the
all.
other thing I'd comment is make a
Should
comment on
we,
is
should we,
that when you were married at age 20, I'm sure you didn't envision, plan, or whatever, but life has an amazing way of unfolding and,
twists and turns?
taking opportunities,
Yeah.
seeing opportunities, and you certainly have done that. And
I always
guess-
say living on a farm, you learn how to work and help each other and share and, you know, do a lot of things that I feel now, you know, contribute to what you're doing now with the young children. They come home from school and, you know, watch TV or do something else because there's not much chores. You know, we had piles of chores to do, and so we'd have to contribute that way. But times have changed, and they get driven both ways, and I know they have to. But you know, it was just different when I was a kid, because we were expected to do our share.
Well, those have become learning experiences, and they've
Yeah.
held you in good stead for a lifetime.
Hmm.
And Red Deer has certainly been profited from it and been advantaged by it, and
Good.